Cool. So welcome to the how to write Justin style emails for maximum influence and maximum money. We're going to dive into this, get rolling right away. So I'm going to share my screen. By the way, I had one funny thing to share with you guys that I wanted to show before we even started. This is someone who replied to one of my emails yesterday and said, also try to make your emails more fun like Jason's because they're kind of boring, bro. Gotta love that. You're getting ready to teach email and this guy says I'm boring. So can't please everybody. So I am going to dive into this. Let me pull up the chat. Can everybody see this all right? Cool. Cool. So one of the tough things with sharing email examples is they don't really fit on slides. So I'm going to have to kind of bounce back and forth between examples in the email and the slides, which kind of a pain in the butt, but it's the best way to do it so that I can show you real full examples so that you can learn the best. So let's dive right in. What we're going to cover: how to write Justin style emails for yourself and for your clients, how to come up with endless ideas to write about. That was a big one that you guys are really interested in. When to promote versus when to send content, how to make maximum money on your promotional emails, and then my favorite ways to build a list. Now, before we dive into all that, let's kind of establish what's the big benefit of using the personality-driven emails that you see people like me writing, people like Ben Settle, stuff like that. So first thing is you have a real bond with your readers. A lot of the kind of churn and burn email lists, there's no real bond with the readers. It's just make as much money as quickly as possible because those people are going to unsubscribe or leave the list or not be interested at some point. So let's just make as much money as quick as possible. When you do personality driven emails, you actually have a real bond with your list and people actually know you. So you and I may have never met in person. We may have never hung out in person, but if you've been on my email list for 2 or 3 years, you probably know a good amount of stuff about me. And you probably like me in some regards, you trust me. So that's why you keep reading. So second thing there is kind of what I just mentioned. Your readers know, like, and trust you. The third one is something that I really kind of think about a lot, which is that the personality driven emails are really, really effective for the long game. So if you want to keep customers buying from you month after month, year after year, the personality driven emails are a great way to do that. Like I said, as opposed to, you see this a lot like in weight loss where they will not use personality driven emails. They'll just use short kind of click driver emails and try to just sell you as many things as possible, as quickly as possible. That actually works pretty well for those, for that niche. But if you're in a niche where you want to keep people, if you're a coach, you're an expert, you're a consultant, guru, you want to keep people around for a long time. And so you want to keep those same people buying from you over and over again. And it's a lot easier to sell something to someone than it is to, it's easier to sell a second, third, and fourth thing to someone than it is to make the first sale. So that's really the big benefit of this. And then the last one here is really the best way I've seen to sell mid-level and high ticket offers is through the personality driven emails. So the personality driven emails, like I've sold, when we did the Copy Accelerator Mastermind for the live events for, I don't know, tickets that were $1,500, sold 300 to 400 tickets through email. I've enrolled people into the actual Copy Accelerator Mastermind because of my emails, which those people were paying anywhere between 15 and 40 grand a year, depending on which level they were in. So I've seen it happen in other niches too. A friend of mine runs some high-end dating stuff in the men's dating niche, programs anywhere from $12,000 to $40,000. does the exact same thing as I do with my emails, and that works very, very well for him. So yeah, if you're selling mid-ticket, high ticket, having a bond with your list and sending these personality driven emails is really the best way to sell those things. So I kind of touched on this a little bit already, but who should use personality driven emails? Like I said, people are focused on the long game. If you want same customers buying from you year after year, this is a great way to do it. Coaches, experts, consultants, gurus. So I got a couple examples here. Let's say you're a gut health expert, or you're a guitar expert, or you're a dating coach, or crypto influencer, or you're an expert in prepping survivals type stuff, or stock picking. Every single one of those lends itself really, really well to using personality driven emails. Yep, there's going to be plenty of examples that are shared within this presentation. So we'll get there. So let's kind of start with the biggest mistake that I see. I mentioned this in one of my emails. So, and I made this mistake a lot early on when I started my email list. You're focused on delivering information instead of entertaining. So the reality is that people don't want information, especially if it's boring. They really want to be entertained. And I'll give you a kind of a good example of this. So this was from the prepper niche. So let's just kind of read through this. Hi, Justin. Is it snowing where you are? I love looking out on my backyard when the first snow of winter comes in. What if I told you it could be key to your survival? Knowing how to use snow in a sticky situation can make all the difference in a crisis. That's why I've dug up 9 important uses for snow and added them to my blog. Check them out here. It includes how to use it in place of a common kitchen appliance, turning ice into fire, and why you shouldn't eat snow to stay hydrated, blah, 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 blah. That's a very just kind of informational kind of email. And that's not going to engage people. It's not going to be relatable. And they're not going to kind of keep checking in and reading your emails if this is what you're sending out. So this is the type of email we really want to avoid because it is very just informational and there's not really any entertainment or storytelling aspect to it. So a lot of what I've learned a lot about emails stuff from your typical sources like Dan Kennedy and stuff like that. But radio guys who are really good at what they do are kind of some of the best people to study for this. So like I'm a big Howard Stern fan. And so him and Rush Limbaugh are probably the two most successful radio people of all time. Very, very different shows too. Like Rush Limbaugh, very political, whereas Howard Stern is just kind of more like fun and kind of teenage boy humor kind of stuff. But one of the things that Rush always talked about, and found this quote from him. He's like, people care about 3 things when it comes to radio, which is being entertained, and being entertained. And that same theory applies to your emails. That's really what people want more than anything, more than they want information about losing weight or making money or dating advice or how to be a better guitar player. They want to be entertained. And we're going to, like I said, I'm going to show you a bunch of examples of how to do this, but I really want you to kind of grasp that concept and keep it in mind as we go through this whole presentation. So if we look at an email, like a typical email that I send to my list and you break it down, it should be about 80% entertainment and 20% information. So you might be wondering, what does that look like? So entertainment, really, when I say entertainment, I mean telling captivating stories. So a fun story, a dramatic story, a nightmare story, a problem. That's really what it looks like. And we're going to show a couple examples of this here with different niches. Let's see. Okay, so this is from the crypto niche, Scott Phillips. So Scott has a very, I would say, kind of in your face, brusque kind of personality. And he writes his emails in that way 100%, which is really what you want to do. You want to write in the voice of who you are. You don't want to like sugarcoat who you are. You don't want to try to be someone you're not. You want to write with kind of who you are. So Scott says, imagine betting against me right now. Yesterday, while the market was crashing, I told you it was a trap. I spied with my little eye a sneaky rat fucker looking to crash the market so they can start a short squeeze and buy Bitcoin on the cheap. Shows a couple graphs. Lo and behold, the last 30 minutes have seen a short squeeze for the record books. Bitcoin is flying right now. It's no accident that this happened just before the close of a daily candle. Here's the thing, big money leaves big footprints. Little guys like us can see those footprints in the sand very easily if we look for them. When you set aside all the stupid prediction monkey stuff and listen to the market, things become way clearer. You might notice that I'm reading this market unusually clearly right now, whereas a few weeks ago, I was like the retarded stepchild of technical analysts. Markets are like that. They go through a process I call easy time, hard time, where you can play the game on cheat mode for a while. Now is one of those times. We're starting a short squeeze rally, which should be followed by an end of days crash, blah, 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 blah. And that's when we scoop up some Bitcoin, blah, 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 blah. So one thing to note with like financial and crypto stuff, it tends to be really based on what's going on in the markets, because the people that read those emails really want to know your opinion on kind of what happened that day. So this is a good example of kind of tying in what's going on in the market that day, and then Scott kind of leaving his kind of his big ideas and big points that he's trying to make, which is big money leaves big footprints. And we're going to go into this a little bit as we go on with the call, teaching you how to kind of make a point in an email and how to get that point across. So I'm going to show you a couple more examples. This is from my buddy who has a men's dating list. So subject line, turned down by my ex. Here's a very fresh lesson about rejection. This went down about an hour ago. I sent a cheeky text to my ex this morning, asking if she wanted to hang out. We casually hooked up a month ago when I got back to New York, and it was great. It was nice catching up. I also hadn't seen her in over 4 months since we broke up. So our hookup was pretty intense. But when I asked her today if she wanted to meet up again, she said, honestly, I'm kind of seeing a few people, so I don't think that's super healthy for us. She shut me down. I told her I understood, and that was that. But to be honest, I absolutely felt the sting of rejection. And it's not because I wanted to get back with her or that I'm missing her sorely. It's simply that the nature of rejection is that it's hardwired into us. We've been programmed to feel it because for most of human existence, we needed to be accepted by communities and groups. It's the only way we could survive. One human alone is pretty helpless. And so we've been wired to hate rejection, to be extra sensitive to it, especially when it comes from another person that we know and care about. So what did I do? I didn't try to fight the feeling. That's an unwinnable game. I let it sit. I felt it fully, and I'm letting it run its course. I'm understanding that it's not a sign that I've made a big mistake by breaking up with her, or that this is proof there's something wrong with me. It's just an emotion. One thing that will come and go as long as I don't make it mean something more. Now, there's a big lesson here, because you'll definitely encounter something similar as you go about your dating and your overall life. You'll connect with someone that you really like, and for whatever reason, it just falls apart. Maybe she unmatches you, or she suddenly goes cold and flat out disappears. Worst of all, you'll have no idea why. Whatever the reason, in that moment, you'll feel the sting of rejection. But keep in mind that it's something you're programmed to be sensitive to, something you inherited from your ancestors, and you don't make it mean anything more than that. Then the feeling will come and go. So before you know it, you'll forget the entire ordeal ever happened. It's a simple idea, but a really powerful one, because feeling rejection comes hand in hand with being active in the dating world. It's part of life, but if you approach it this way, it won't destroy you, blah, 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 blah. So you could, if you read a lot of my emails, you could tell that a lot of how he writes his emails are based on my emails. But this is a really good kind of entertaining story of being rejected, trying to go back to an ex and not working out, something that would be a very relatable story for most people that are on this list. And then he has a big kind of point at the end, in that rejection, yeah, it sucks, but it's kind of normal. And you just got to get used to it. Is this making sense to everybody so far? Sweet. We'll keep going with the examples. So Ben Settle, I'm sure a lot of you guys know Ben. But like I said, Ben is also someone who very much just writes in his own voice. uses his own kind of language, doesn't really hold anything back. This is a good example of how to take what is basically a boring question of someone asking for advice on how to write an email sequence. And then Ben basically going into his beliefs about people kind of caring about things that don't really matter a whole lot, which he's really talking about nurturing leads here, and that it's really not that big of a deal. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he goes into people worrying about open rates and opt-in rates and blah, blah, blah. He says, instead, focus on what you can control. So for email, that means sifting and sorting and curating an email list full of people who are actually receptive to the kind of offers you make in the first place. It means mailing the list every day. It means not obsessing over your open rate. And really not just not looking at things based on data. So he's kind of going contrarian here against what a lot of people say with email. And really, he's just explaining in his own way what he thinks matters, and it does it in it, like I said, in an entertaining way. That's really what we're focusing on here. He's not giving a step-by-step, here's what you should do to kind of do an email sequence. That would be boring. He's doing much more. You see much more of his personality injected into this email. That's kind of the big thing I want you guys to see there. I'll show you one more here from me. This is one I sent last month. I was in Las Vegas, took this picture when I was walking down the Vegas Strip, me in front of Circus Circus. So I basically just tell the story of Circus Circus is basically the Walmart of hotels on the Vegas Strip. It hasn't been updated in 50 years. All the rooms reek of smoke and mildew. It's literally just a straight dump. But when I went to Vegas for the first time in 2006, when I was broke and had no money, I stayed at Circus Circus. So I just graduated college. I was trying to get my affiliate marketing business going. Scraping together a few $100s to go to a conference in Vegas was not easy, but I made it happen. All the guys I was there with were staying at nice places like Caesars or the Bellagio, but I was slumming it at Circus Circus. I even put a little note in here that I don't even think I even went out for like dinners that weekend. I literally just I bought a loaf of bread and peanut butter and sat in my room basically the entire weekend eating bread and peanut butter because I didn't have any money. So anyways, and I share kind of the story of I walked by the hotel this morning, and it made me think of how much things had changed for me over the years. I talk about how when I was younger, I was all ego. I thought I knew everything. I hated the idea of asking for help. And when it came to my business, I was all short-term focused. I just wanted to make a bunch of money. I didn't care how I did it. I talk about how the early years were a struggle, and I almost quit multiple times. And then kind of go into the big point I want to make here, which is everyone starts at the bottom. So the bottom is where it's the toughest. It's where you're fighting just to pay your rent and trying to get anything going. It can be incredibly frustrating. You constantly make mistakes. You doubt yourself every day, but that's just part of the process. And it's why so many people give up early on. So that's kind of the whole thing. And basically I just say my advice is to embrace it, understand the bottom's the toughest part, and just kind of embrace it. So like I said, interesting and relatable story. I mean, pretty much everybody does start at the bottom. So even if someone reading this is making $10 million a year now, they 100% remember when they were broke and had to do things like this. So, and also for the people on my list that are in this position, they really, really related to that. So that's a couple examples of what I'm talking about with kind of personality driven emails. Now let's dive into how to actually write these. And we're going to go through kind of how I format this. So each email you write should fit into one of three categories. I look at them as a bonding email, a selling email, or the third one is really kind of a hybrid of the two. And I'm going to show you a couple examples of these and the way I do it. So this is a good example of a selling email. What's interesting is a lot of like my selling emails could also just be bonding emails if I just took the pitch off at the end. That's really all it is for mine. They're very, very similar. I just add a little pitch at the end for whatever it is I'm promoting. So this is one of the emails I sent a few days ago promoting this course or this training. So in my 18 years of making money online, I've tried damn near everything you could think of, such as SEO, blogging, Facebook ads, freelance copywriting, lead gen, info product supplements, coaching, you name it. I probably tried it. The cool thing is that all the stuff I tried did work. I made 6 figures as an affiliate back in the mid 2000s. I built an MMA blog and sold it for 40 grand. My supplement company grew to 23 million in revenue before I sold it. And my coaching business, Copy Seller, was making me between 1 and 1.5 million a year the last few years. So all of these things worked. However, most of them required a lot of work. And then I go into give an example. When I was running my supplement company, we had a lot of stresses with cash flow. We had 40 plus employees. I was constantly writing copy, coming up with new offers, testing new angles. So even though I was making great money, it was a lot of work, a lot of stress, and a lot of responsibility. And this brings me to the point I want to make. So I want to point this out. This is how pretty much every email I write is formatted: story, point, story, point, story, point. You can't, so if you have a great story, it has to have a point on it. Like you can't just tell a great story. There needs to be some type of point for the reason that you're telling the story. And that's something they can feel like they took away a learning lesson. So the point of this is really to talk about the easiest thing I've done in the last 18 years is writing emails to my list. So I kind of go into why I think that is. I talk about some of the wins I've had doing that. I'm able to make 20 to 35K a month doing it. And if you're interested in doing something similar, then I suggest you take me up on what I'm about to. And then here's kind of the pitch for the training that you're on right now. So this is a really good example of, like I said, story, point, story, point. I'm going to keep pointing that out because that's really all these emails are. So that was a good example of a selling email. I want to show you this in the financial niche. So this is Stansberry, one of the biggest players in the financial niche. They don't write. All right, so let me break this down. So theirs tend to be content in the middle. So this is where the content starts. And they do all this basically talking about whatever stock was. And then they have ads worked in that go to their own offers throughout the copy. This is how pretty much all theirs is. So they have one down here. They got more down here. I think this first one at the top is also one as well. So 4 or 5 different little ads throughout. And then they kind of sandwich the content in the middle. Their writing it's a little more technical than like my writing would be, but if you compared it to someone who's like a true, I guess, kind of like financial writer who would write something that'd be really technical and really boring, they actually do pretty good of making things somewhat interesting to the people reading it. So this is a good example of what I call the hybrid one. So I mentioned there's bonding, there's selling, and there's hybrid. The financial people do a lot of the hybrid kind of blend. So that's, you got content in the middle, and then you got ads kind of throughout that sell stuff. So this last one I want to share with you is basically just a straight bonding email. This is one I wrote on burnout, I believe. Yeah, I worked 80 hours a week, and this is what happened. So every time I write an email about why you shouldn't work 80 hours a week, I get a bunch of responses from people asking, do you think you'd be successful today if you had worked less back then? It's an interesting question because most people see this as a black and white thing. Either you work 80 hours a week and you're successful, or you work 20 hours a week and you don't have any money. There doesn't seem to be an in between. Here's what I can tell you from experience. If you're putting in 80 hours a week consistently, and if everything in your life is about work, it's not a matter of if you're going to burn out. It's only a matter of when you're going to burn out. I guarantee you that. If you're working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. each day and working on Saturday and Sunday and never taking vacations and ignoring your family on Christmas morning to get some work done, you are going to burn out. That's a fact. Sure, you might make a bunch of money, but you will be miserable. Take it for someone who's been there. And then I kind of go into a story here about my experience with this. In 2016, I made the most money I've ever made in a year, somewhere around 2.2 million. And I was working nonstop. I was always on my computer. Nothing else in my life mattered but work. Normal stuff like dating, going to dinner, and hanging with friends was pushed aside. And even though I had a great year, I wound up burnout. I lost all my passion for what I was doing. I dreaded waking up the next morning. For me, that was my wake up call. The 80-hour week is not sustainable. It's kind of similar to running black hat ads on Facebook. It can work in the short term and can make you a bunch of money, but it won't last because you can't sustain it for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And that's the problem. If you want to be an entrepreneur or a copywriter with staying power, you have to have balance in your life. You have to make time for non-business stuff. That's the key, blah, 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 blah. So let's hop back to, so those are a couple examples of a bonding, selling, and a hybrid email. And here's kind of the way I look at this. So I usually do 2 week-long promos each month. Those are all selling emails. Those are either for my own products or for an affiliate offer. One thing I will note on that, and we'll dive into this a little later, your own products, when you have a personality-driven list, you are kind of an expert, guru, coach, anything like that, your own products are going to sell much better than affiliate stuff. I'll show you a good example of this. So from this promo, I did almost $55,000 in sales. I've never hit anywhere near that much with affiliate promos. I think the best I ever did with an affiliate is like 35 grand, and that was really good. I mean, some of the affiliate ones I'll do 10 grand, 12 grand, things like that. So very, very different. My list is only 9,000 people, so honestly not very big, compared to a lot of the people out there at least. But yeah, but I think the big point here I really want to point out is that the more you focus on your own products, you can make a whole lot more money. James said, Ben Settle insists on putting a promo link in every email, even if it's just a PS. What's your view on that? Yeah, I'll get to that actually. And then I think the next slide, I kind of addressed that. So usually I do 2 promos a month. And then the rest of my emails are bonding style emails. My way is not the only way to do it. People always argue about this. There's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way that works. As I showed you some of the stuff before, I have kind of my way that works for me. Agora and 4 Patriots both do the hybrid approach, which are basically that content in the middle and then ads around it. That works really well for them. Ben is pretty famous for promoting something every single day in his emails. That works pretty well for him. The only reason I've honestly never done the promote something every day is because I don't actually have something to promote every day. Like if I had an evergreen kind of offer like Ben does with like a newsletter or some type of product that I could continuously promote, I probably would do it. Or at the very least, I'd just stick a PS and kind of a link down there. But I don't actually have anything. And so it's not really that relevant for me. And I don't really feel like doing the work to create that type of thing. So I'm super happy with just promoting kind of 2 times a month. I'm good with that. So big thing to take away here is really finding a promo schedule that you're comfortable with and that brings you in the kind of money you want to make. So like I said, we laid all that out. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. Find one that you actually like, that you're comfortable with, and that kind of fits what you're trying to do. All right, so I'll take a little break here. Anybody got any questions before we hop to what to actually write about in your emails? All right, we'll jump into what to write about. So this was a big one that a lot of people asked about. I'll swing back to some of those questions that you guys just popped in. So 2 things I focus on when it comes to what I want to write about is the topics I want to teach and then things I want people to know about me. The second part is really, really important because that's what actually bonds you with the people on your list, is them knowing different things about you and very specific things about you. We're going to go into a bunch of examples of this, but that's a very, very important topic. And I want you guys to kind of keep that in mind. So I have basically 5 different topics that I like to talk about to my email list. And I break these down as copywriting, marketing, money, lifestyle, and entrepreneurship. And then within each of those topics, I write out certain things, which I call kind of my core beliefs or points that I want to teach. And I'm going to show you guys some examples of this. So under the topic of lifestyle, here's a few of the beliefs that I have that if you've been on my list for a while, you've seen me talk about these over and over again. So belief number 1, if you work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's not a matter of if you burn out, but only a matter of when. That was very similar to that email I just read to you. That was kind of the big point of that email. Belief number 2, your business can't be the only thing in your life. So like I said, these are all under the topic of lifestyle. I'm a big believer that you need to build your life and your business together. You can't just be all business all the time. So under lifestyle, these are the kind of the beliefs that I'm going to constantly preach to my list over and over and over and over again, because I really want to imprint these things on. Belief number 3, it's about getting the life you want, not what other people want. So everybody wants different things. You might be super happy making 80 grand a year and living on a ranch in Colorado. You might be super happy making 200 grand a year and being a digital nomad and traveling the world. You might want to make $5 million a year and have a big business with a bunch of employees. It all is very, very dependent on the person and what they want. So I'm very big on, it's about getting the life that you want, not what other people want. So I write a lot of emails about that. And I'll show you guys a couple examples of this here. Actually, no, I don't have examples right now, but we actually have more examples to go into. So big thing here is you start with the beliefs and points that you want to teach, and then you find stories that tie in with those beliefs and points. And I got a couple examples of this for different niches. So let's say if you're in personal finance and you're coming up with things you wanted to teach, a couple of common ones I've seen other people use. It's not about how much money you make, it's about how much you save. So that would be a big kind of point that you could write multiple emails about with a ton of different stories. Next one would be, if you can't buy something twice, you can't afford it. Kind of just a pretty common personal finance kind of trope that you shouldn't be, it's basically saying you shouldn't be spending more money than you have. Last one here, you can only cut so much from your spending, but you can always make more money. So if I was a personal finance guru, this might be something like you would see in my emails. A couple that I used when I wrote health emails for my old supplement company, one of the ones I used all the time that always did really, really well was, it's never too late. Our list was mostly 60 to 80 year olds who wanted to improve their health. And a big, big thought they had in their head was that it's too late to kind of fix their health and to get in shape. And so I always wrote emails about it's never too late. So I'd write really inspiring stories of someone who's 85 years old and used to be laying on the couch all day and their muscles wasting away. And now they're running marathons or in the gym lifting 200 pounds. Those emails just crushed. People in that demographic loved hearing those emails. And I couldn't, honestly, I had it on my rotation where I literally wrote one every single week that was just based on the it's never too late kind of point. So another point that might want to make in health would be you can't out exercise a bad diet. That was one I used over and over again because a lot of people put way more focus on their workouts and their exercises instead of the diet. And that's a big mistake because no matter how much you run or walk on the treadmill or lift weights, if you got a crappy diet, you can't beat that. So lastly, if it doesn't have a heartbeat or grow from the ground, I don't eat it. So a lot of the stuff we preached was very kind of based on the paleo diet. So the this was kind of a big point that we talked about over and over, and used lots of really interesting stories about where food comes from and how our ancestors ate and stuff like that. And people always love those emails, and really kind of bonded with that idea of, if it didn't grow from the ground, or if God didn't put it on earth, then I don't eat it. That type of thing worked really well with our crowd. So based on this, here's kind of what you need to do. So I talked about, you want to have the topics. So build out the topics you want to talk about. So like for me, I talk about copy, I talk about marketing, talk about money, talk about lifestyle, entrepreneurship. One of those should probably be your kind of main topic. Like I'm probably most known for copy, although I don't really write about it as much anymore. But then you should have, I don't know, maybe you have 3 topics you write about, maybe you have 5. It doesn't really matter how many. But you kind of have your main ones that you're going to write about over and over again. And then you kind of want to have 3 to 7 beliefs, ideologies, points, whatever you want to call them, in each of those topics that you want people to know. And then the last thing you'll do is start listing out stories that tie in with each of those things that you want to teach. And I'm going to show you some examples of that here. So let's say my topic is copywriting. The belief I want to teach, the point I want to make, is that great offers are molded over time. They're not home runs right off the bat. So this is something I've written a lot of emails about, because a lot of people put out an offer, it doesn't work, and they think that it should be working right out of the gate. But the reality is that great offers are molded over time, and very, very rarely are they home runs right out of the gate. So if I want to teach that, I need a good story to teach it. So a story that I have kind of from my personal life, I launched a testosterone supplement in 2013. It was breaking even right out of the gate. We made a very dumb mistake of barely promoting it and kind of just pushing it to the wayside, because I didn't realize that breaking even right out of the gate on your ad spend was good. I thought it was supposed to be a home run right away. I thought it was supposed to be bringing in 2 or 3 times what we spent on the ads. I thought, like, if we spend $1,000 on Facebook ads, we should be making $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever it is. And that was completely wrong. So that's a great story that kind of illustrates the point that I'm trying to make here. I see all the questions in the chat. I will swing back to them after this. Another example, let's say I'm talking about marketing. One of the beliefs I talk about all the time is whoever can spend the most money to acquire a customer will win. A great example of this, I tell a story from the Titans of Direct Response event. Greg Ranker, who is one of the guys who started Guthy Ranker, the big infomercial company, he told a really good story from the stage about how they go 18 months in the hole on an infomercial for Proactive, which is their acne kind of serum stuff, before they break even. So if they put a infomercial on the air today, it would take them 18 months before they broke even on all the cost of the media and producing the infomercial and all that stuff, which is pretty crazy. But they can do that because they know their numbers really well. And once it hits that 18 months, then they start profiting. And that's a game that not very many people want to play. So it kind of ties right in with the belief that I'm trying to teach, that whoever can spend the most money to acquire a customer is going to win. Guthy Ranker wins because they can spend way more money. They can spend way more money to acquire a customer than their competitors. Another example, topic, money. So I said one of my topics that I teach on is money. A lot of it's around money beliefs, stuff like that. One of the things I talk about is you can make too much money. This is kind of controversial and different from what a lot of people teach. And the way I basically look at it is that, so in 2016, I was working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I wound up making 2.2 million that year. I sacrificed everything, dating, my stress levels, friends, to make that money, but I was barely spending $100,000 a year. Did I really need to kill myself to make that much money? So I'm trying to prove the point that I think after a certain point, chasing more money is not really beneficial. So could I have worked a lot less and been a lot less stressed and made $1 million a year? Because it's not like I really needed to make $2.2 million a year. So that's kind of one of the things I talk about. Like I said, It's kind of contrarian to what a lot of other people teach, but it's something I'm kind of a big believer in. So it's one of my points that I teach. I'm gonna run through some of the questions here. Valerie said, "Are you describing teaching this email writing category for a client, but you are using different terminology?" I'm not really sure what you're asking there, Valerie. In terms of nurture emails, I don't do any type of nurtures. People, when they get on my list, they just go straight into the daily email that I'm sending out. Um, I mean, you could totally do everything I'm teaching right now for clients if that's what you're asking. You just need to talk to them and get to know them and really pull the stories out. It'd probably be something like you talking to them once a week or so to get stories from them. It'll take a little while to kind of learn it. And then they'll start giving you a little more leadway in what you can talk about. And you can also tell all kinds of stories from your own life and just tell it as like, so I know this guy who did this, 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 and this, and then you tell that story. Usually most people are fine with you telling that story. John said, if you're copywriting for clients, should you adopt their company's beliefs, ideologies to fit their client base, or should you base your copy completely off yourself? No, you'd want to base it off their stuff, not yours. So yeah, your goal is to write in their voice and with their beliefs, and all of that. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. So John, you had a very similar question. I think I answered that. What's your approach to finding stories that are not personal, like the 60-year-old inspiration stories, just Google work or fabricated? Mine were mostly ones I just found online, either through things like Reddit or forums, or if you find just like sensational stories that people are posting on video things on Instagram or on Facebook, those tend to be where I found a lot of the stories. I'm not really a fan of making them up because you can actually find much better stories that are real, and they're not that hard to find if you just do a little searching on forums and Reddit and stuff like that. Dan said, should you get on a call with your client to determine the topics they want to teach on and brainstorm with them, their beliefs, stories as well? Yep, absolutely. So this is something that you'll really need to build this out. And it'll kind of change over time. You'll start adding more things to it. It'll start to flesh out. It's not like something you do in an hour. So it is going to take a little bit of time to build that out. But yeah, you really want to dig into kind of what are the things they want to teach, what are the things they believe in. You could see this with every kind of bit. Like Dave Ramsey is a great example of, he has probably 10 or 15 principles that he just talks about over and over and over and over again. So if you were writing for someone like Dave, it'd be pretty easy to put this together. Yeah, so you really just kind of got to talk to the client and draw those stories and kind of beliefs out of them. Forest, yeah, you're like I said, Reddit and forums, stuff like that. Megan said, if you're just starting out or re-engaging a list, how long does it typically take to gain know like trust before someone buys? That's a good question. I mean, if you're writing good emails, I mean, it's not that, I don't think it would take that long. I mean, there'll be a certain percentage of people that are on your list that are just going to buy stuff right away from you. I don't think there's any type of like, oh, it's going to take 6 months or it's going to take a year. I don't think there's anything like that. If you're doing the emails properly and you're writing engaging emails that they're interested in, you can start making sales right away. Florian said, does permission-based opt-in work better quality-wise as just normal opt-in? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking on that. Ricardo said, would you recommend creating stories with Jasper? I I've never used Jasper, so I can't really comment on that. Mac, yes, I'll be talking about at the end how to grow the email list. What to do for research when you're looking for these stories, keywords you use. Yeah, really just I tend to search like Reddit, basically go to Google and search Reddit and then kind of stories. There's also forums. So like if you're doing weight loss, there's tons of like weight loss forums. If you're doing prepper stuff, there's prepper forums. There's Facebook groups, and you can just pull ideas and stories and all kinds of stuff out of those really, really easily. Caroline, would you incorporate the weekly conversation with a client as part of your proposal, a monthly retainer of clients ever felt it's too much work for them to do that with you weekly? Yeah, I mean, some of them might think it is. They might think it's too much work. A lot of it could be monthly, and maybe you just pull all the stuff out of a monthly. If they have other content that you could pull stuff from, that's great too. So if they do YouTube videos or Instagram or whatever, or they have a book, and you can pull stuff out of that, that would help as well. But yeah, I think it's, I think if you can get it, if you can do it weekly, great. If not, do it like monthly. And yeah, I would just make that as part of your whatever you're getting paid. That's kind of part of the gig. Tom said, how do you decide which offers to promote other than your own? And where do you find them? I mean, it really comes down to knowing your niche, and knowing your list. So like, I know, for example, my list, I know email stuff works really well. So I'm on the hunt all the time for good email offers, whether that's how to write email copy, email trainings, email swipe files, stuff like that. I know is always going to work well to my list. You'll start to learn this as you write the topics that'll work really well to your list. And then the cool thing is once you know what's working, you just kind of hone in on that. So find the things that work and then just kind of double down on it. Florian, the application-based opt-ins to get onto your list. Yeah, I still have one, the application. I really don't use it a whole lot anymore. My main thing is my actual opt-in. I think I have it here. Yep. So this is the main one I use right now just to build the list. How often do you pitch for sending bonding email to ensure the list doesn't get burned out? Like I said, mine is 2 times a month for 7 days. So 14 days a month I'm doing selling emails. But this is a very important point. My selling emails are not just like, hey, this is on sale, go here and buy it. They are entertaining and engaging emails with a pitch afterward. That way, even if someone doesn't want to buy it, it's still an entertaining kind of read. They're not like, and I'm not just hammering them over the head with like a sales email every single day, pitching something. That's kind of a big point to keep in mind. So if you write in the way I'm kind of teaching you, like I said, which is these entertaining, you have a story, you have a point, and then you kind of do the pitch. You can get to the point where even if you're pitching all the time, it doesn't feel like you're being pitched to all the time. Tracy said, if it's a story you found on Reddit, you say it's a friend or something that it happened to. Yeah, you can always just be like, I heard this story, or someone I know, or whatever it is. The email opt-in lander, Zach. Yeah, so this is just the one I use for my stuff. Very, very simple. I think it's just made in ClickFunnels. Nothing fancy about it. Do you follow a schedule like Monday money, Tuesday lifestyle? I do not. This kind of goes on to the topic of coming up with ideas. To me, ideas tend to come, they're not equal. So like, I don't come up with an idea on Monday and then an idea on Tuesday and then an idea on Wednesday. I tend to come up with ideas in bunches, where like on a Monday, I might come up with 3 really good ideas. So I just have a thing on my phone in the notes app and I'll just write down, write an email on making too much money and whatever story maybe popped in my head that I think I could use to illustrate that. So anytime an idea pops up, 100% you should write it down, because you're not going to remember it and it's going to go away. So whether that's writing it down physically or putting it into your phone like I do, I highly recommend doing that, because there are days you're going to be more creative and you're going to come up with more ideas than others, and you want to capitalize on those days and make sure you get those down. Stacy said, do you create a calendar with a schedule? Yes, let me show you. Mine is a pretty kind of loose outline, but this is more to outline when I'm going to do promos. So this is all the way through December. And as you'll kind of see, like this one, October 5th, Justin doing the email training. Later this month, I'm doing an affiliate offer for Todd Brown. So I have that marked off down here. November, I'm going to do a Black Friday sale of an email course. So it's kind of a broad outline. I don't have it like mapped out day by day or anything like that. But I do kind of have the weeks of when I'm going to promote something. Florian said, do you use a structure for stories? Example, how long do you make them? No, I mean, I really tried it. The biggest thing with stories is trying to start with the action. So try to grab their attention right away. You don't need a huge like build up. Just start with the action as much as you can. And then, yeah, try to make them as entertaining, create some drama. I mean, that's literally, it could be a whole 3-day seminar on how to tell a story. So it's kind of hard for me to go into that, but yeah, you really want to be entertaining. And like I said, start in the action as much as possible. Those are a couple good tips. Tom said, do you always write and send the emails the same day? Yes, I personally do. I have tried the other way where you write them all, and I just cannot do it. My brain is usually pretty fried after writing my email, because I put a lot of kind of thought and mental energy into it. Yeah, I would say each email for me takes about 30 to 45 minutes. I know other people who are able to write 6 in one day. So yeah, that's not really my style, and I'm not good at it. Plus, if you're trying to tie stuff in with stuff that's going on in the world, that makes it a lot harder, because there'll be stuff that comes up throughout the week that maybe I want to touch on in my emails that if I wrote them all on Monday, I wouldn't be able to do that. James said, I'm wondering how much you censor yourself. My list has many different beliefs from me. That's a good question. I would not be too worried about being polarizing, because you'll attract the right kind of people. If you're writing for a client, that's different, because obviously, like, you don't want to be putting beliefs out there that you have that the client doesn't have. That's not what you want to do. But if it's for your own list, I think it really depends what you want to put out there. So like, if you look at some of the stuff I talk about in my emails, like I know someone like Ben Settle Ben will post more kind of political stuff than I do. I am pretty like middle of the road libertarian in my beliefs. So I'm not like super one side or the other. And it's not I don't know. I'm not going to like talk about super polarizing things a lot. I think a lot of it is personal preference. Do you want to attract those people? Do you not want to attract those people? You have to be okay with certain people. If you're going to put polarizing beliefs out there, you have to be okay with people not liking you, because it's certainly going to happen. How do you find the affiliates that you want to work with? Mine are mostly just people that I know through real life events, marketing. And then usually if I find an affiliate that does well, I'll usually ask them if they know anybody else that might be interested. And usually they send me 1 or 2 people that are looking to promote stuff as well. So it's really just through the network. Do you reuse email stories that got a good response? Yeah, we'll go into that at some point. You want to tell the same ones. You want to tell the same ones a lot because you really want to imprint those stories and the points onto people. You can kind of mix it up with using the same point with like a new story. But if you have like great stories, you definitely want to continue to tell them. You don't want to just tell it once and then never tell it again. All right, I'm gonna do a couple more here and then we'll jump back in. So Sean said, can this be used for re-engaging a list? Absolutely. Would this work solely for an e-commerce brand? Yeah, there's a lot of e-commerce brands that use personality-driven emails. Yeah, I think you can definitely do it, especially if you have kind of a face. Maybe it's the person behind the product or the CEO of the company. You could do that. Like the Four Patriots stuff. I think I'll have a couple examples there. They're pretty e-commerce based now. And theirs are kind of that hybrid style email of content with ads around it. If you had to re-engage a list that hasn't heard from you for over a year, how would you go about it? Do you go straight to telling stories? Yeah, I mean, if you could tell really entertaining stories that have a point on them, that's going to get people wanting to open your emails more and more. So yeah, I would 100% do that. All right, so we're gonna keep moving here. So this is one of the questions that came up, which is basically you want to repeatedly talk about your main beliefs, your main points over and over again to imprint them on your readers. This is really important because you want the stories to stick and you want them to know things about you. And the only way to do that is to continuously tell them. So here's kind of a good example of using the same point or the same belief with a different story. So I showed you this one before. Whoever can spend the most to acquire a customer will win. And then we used the Titans of Direct Response event story with Greg Renker. Another example that would be do the exact same belief. So whoever can spend the most to acquire a customer will win. And I have another story of this where Vital Proteins, they're a pretty big supplement company. They couldn't scale their Facebook ads. They had an average order value of $52 on their website. When I was at PaleoFX, I sat down with them. I worked with them, showed them that my supplement offer had an AOV of $210 on a very similar kind of offer to what they were doing. They were stunned. They couldn't believe it. They later implemented some of the suggestions I gave them, boosted their average order value up to $83. And that allowed them to start scaling their ad spend on Facebook and other places that they were buying media. So that's kind of a good example of using the same belief and using different stories to tell that belief and make that same kind of point. All right. So this is kind of probably one of the most important parts of what I'm going to teach you guys, which is getting across what you want people to know about you. I kind of look at this as you're kind of like an octopus and you got your tentacles going out there and those tentacles go out and people just kind of latch onto them and they bond with them based on kind of what you're talking about. So people are going to bond with you on the smallest things. So you really want to be specific on that. And I'm going to show you a bunch of examples of this and how I do it. The other last thing I want to really make you aware of is if you try to make your life appear perfect and that you have everything figured out, nobody's going to be able to relate with you. This is a big, big mistake I see a lot of people make. There was a great example of this. I remember Dan Kennedy talking about this in comic books where when Superman originally came out, Superman actually was not that popular because he was too perfect. Everything about him was perfect. His life as Clark Kent was pretty perfect. Him as Superman, he didn't really have any flaws. And that's just really kind of impossible to relate to. Whereas Spider-Man was very, very relatable because Spider-Man was exactly like the kids reading the book. He was a scrawny little nerd who got picked on at school and he was like into science and was basically getting beat up and never had a girlfriend. That much more relatable than Clark Kent and Superman. So that's a big thing to kind of keep in mind, is that trying to appear perfect is actually going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. So let's look at some examples of things I want people to know about me. So these are the things I talk about a lot in my emails. So I grew up in Sandusky, Ohio, which is a really small town near Cleveland. Blue collar family where my dad worked in a factory, basically worked in a rubber factory where they make conveyor belts for the coal mining industry. And my mom was a waitress for, I would say, most of my childhood. She also was a preschool teacher, worked a bunch of kind of odd number jobs. Now, I tell this story for multiple reasons, but one of the big reasons is it bonds me to people who grew up in a similar situation. Somebody who probably grew up in New York City, not going to bond with that as much as someone who grew up in small town Iowa or small town Texas or whatever it is. And growing up in kind of a blue collar family, anybody who kind of did that and had parents who worked kind of, I don't know, average wage jobs and just always were working, people are going to bond with that as well. And then the second big reason I tell that story is I want it to be known that I didn't grow up with money. I didn't have rich parents. I didn't have like super easy life. So I really want that to be known. And this, me kind of telling this story and getting this out there allows that to happen. Here's a kind of another story I tell that is a really good relatable story to most people. So 2010, I had what I call the week from hell. Basically, my girlfriend that I was living with at the time dumped me. My only client I had at the time fired me, and LeBron James left Cleveland and went to Miami. So I was super depressed and in my apartment all by myself, basically me and my dogs. And I had like a month worth of living expenses left, and basically was at the lowest point of my life and turned all that around to make 220 grand over the next year. One of the reasons I tell that story a lot is it's super relatable. I mean, everybody's had their heart broken. Everybody's lost a client. And then everybody's been at a point where they're really questioning, like, am I cut out to be an entrepreneur? Am I cut out to be a copywriter? Should I be doing this? That type of story is very, very relatable to a lot of the people on my list. And then it has a happy ending where I turned everything around, got out of that kind of darkness, and had one of my best years ever for that point in my life where I made 220 grand. This one's a really good example of, like I said, not just sharing good things you want people to know about you. So I've written a lot of emails about basically my childhood. I had a pretty rough childhood with lots of abuse and negativity. I grew up with very low kind of self-esteem, thinking I was a piece of shit and that I was worthless. I've told this story many times about wanting to be an entrepreneur and wanting to do my own thing, and my mom never believing in me, basically constantly putting me down. And I even talk about how to this day our relationship is still not great. I'm 38-year-old grown man, and we still don't have a good relationship. When I write about stuff like this and I tie it in with whatever point I'm trying to make, these emails get a ton of responses because I get even if pretty much everybody had a not great childhood in one way or another. Nobody's childhood was perfect. So somebody who might have had a dad that was really hard on them, or a parent that didn't believe in them, they're going to really, really relate to what I'm talking about here. So a lot of people are kind of hesitant to share these stories, but the thing I've realized is the stories that you're usually like scared to share and scared to actually talk about are usually the ones that bond the most with your readers. So it's not easy for me to talk about this stuff, but every time I do it, the connection just gets deeper and deeper between me and the people on my list because they really relate to what I'm talking about. Another thing I share, another thing I want people to know about me. So when I was little, I didn't have like big entrepreneurial aspirations because I didn't really even understand what that meant. But I was definitely a hustler. So I was selling baseball cards at garage sales. I was buying them and trading them with friends and like trying to flip them and make $2. I was buying WWE action figures and selling them on eBay and trying to make money. I was going around my neighborhood and mowing lawns, basically anything to like make a dollar. Which I tell it for a couple of reasons because that's a very relatable thing for most entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs have had kind of similar things going on when they were younger. Might not have been these exact things, but they were doing lemonade stands or I don't know, shoveling snow, or there you go. Stacy said I sold taffy. So yeah, most entrepreneurs have somewhat of a similar story and they can relate to me telling that. Another thing I like people to know. So I'm a big believer in individual liberty and freedom. I would say in terms of like political stuff that I talk about, this is probably the main thing I will, and I don't particularly take a side on it, but I'm just a huge believer that individual liberty and freedom is the most important thing in society. And even if I don't agree with what someone's saying or what they're doing, I'm going to defend to the death their right to be able to do that. That there's a couple reasons I put that in there. One, it's something that I really believe in, and two, most entrepreneurs, most kind of self-starters and ambitious people have pretty similar thoughts around this. Like they're not big fans of socialism and communism and stuff like that. They're very big fans of liberty and freedom. So that's going to bond with a lot of the people on my list. Another thing I always talk about, my love for dogs. So I work with a lot of dog rescues. I help them to raise money so they can help more dogs. I used to have two Great Danes. You see in the picture there, George and Dempsey. The reason I talk about dogs a lot, I really like talking about it. And then I have a bunch of stories that I can share with like copy stuff with the dog rescues I work with, stuff like that, marketing stuff that I've learned working with dog rescues. So there's always good stories I can tie in with it. And then that's just it's a huge bonding point. People who like dogs bond with other people who like dogs. So anybody that's on my list is a dog lover. Whenever I talk about dogs and show pictures, they're going to relate to that. By the way, I see all your guys' questions coming in. I will definitely answer them when I'm done with this. So another thing I want people to know about me, I don't talk about this a ton, but I do once in a while. I've had Crohn's disease since I was 16, which is basically a bowel disease. Basically forces me to have a strict diet and makes it hard to travel and eat out with friends. I was on the carnivore diet for 3 or 4 years, and then super strict autoimmune paleo diet before that. So a lot of kind of struggles around that. Interestingly, whenever I tell the story about stuff with Crohn's disease, I get tons and tons of people who have other type of gut issues and gut diseases and whatever. Always respect. It really connects with people that have similar stuff going on. One I've started sharing a little more lately. In my late 20s, early 30s, I was a big partier, so I used to drink 10 to 15 drinks every Friday and Saturday night. I'd spend most of the next day on the couch hungover. Kind of hit a wall with that where I was just like, I don't want to keep doing this. I feel like I'm just literally wasting my life away. And nowadays I really hardly drink, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, which is like special occasions for friends' weddings, bachelor parties, stuff like that. I feel a lot better because of it. Every time I tell stories about that I used to party and that I don't really drink anymore, I get a lot of really good feedback and people really kind of relating with what I'm telling. So I'm going to continue to tell those stories because this is a wide kind of swath of connection. Pretty much most people at some point in their life probably drank too much, or they had a drinking problem, or they partied too much. So it's a pretty easy thing to bond with people on. Cool. So this is what I was kind of talking about with you're putting out these tentacles of what you want people to know about you. And then you talk about them as often as possible so that people will bond with you on those things. All right, I'm gonna go back and answer a couple of the questions. I think we got one more thing and then we'll take a little break and then we'll come back. Stacy said, how many listers subscribe to in order to get ideas, see what other people are doing? I used to be subscribed to a lot of lists. I would say nowadays I really hardly pay attention to what other people are doing, mostly because I just kind of want to do my own thing and not really be influenced by other people, what they're doing. So yeah, I mean, very, very rarely am I reading kind of other people's lists these days. I'm trying to honestly even think of like whose stuff I read. It's very rare, very rare. Maybe I'll read one if it catches my eye, but when you're early on and learning, I think it's a great way to do it. Paying attention to people that you want to kind of mimic or emulate their style. I think it's a good idea early on, but once you kind of develop your own style, I think it's smarter to kind of just do your own thing. Matthew said, your particular opt-in method is rather unique. I'd imagine your open rate is super high, but how did you initially start building your list? We'll get into list building a little bit, but mine initially started by just literally manually emailing people who I thought would want to be on my list. And I was like, I'm going to start this email list. I'm going to talk about marketing and copy every day. If you want to be on it, just let me know and I'll add you to the list. I think I got my first 150 opt-ins basically doing that. Literally just manually emailing people and asking them if they wanted to be on it. So yeah, that's the way it started. Mac from Ohio, Cleveland. Awesome, man. Ricardo said, so how much self-deprecation should be used? If you use too much, you could drive away a list. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Self-deprecation. You mean like self-deprecating humor? Or I mean, sharing your flaws and your vulnerabilities is always really good. It's also really good when people see you on this pedestal, like they see you up here and you share a story about, let's say you're a diet coach and you share a story about how you had one too many cocktails on Friday night and you ended up eating a whole large pizza all by yourself. People are going to really, really relate to that story because they've probably done the same thing. So I like to, like I said, I try to tell stories that are relatable and things that make me seem not as much up on the pedestal, because people are looking at me kind of like this as this kind of copy god, copy guru, whatever you want to call it. So when I tell things that make me more relatable, that really helps the bonding. Patrick said, what are some thoughts on how to share imperfections and hardships without coming across as a whiner? It's really all about the point you make with the email. So if I tell a story about how I had a bunch of abuse going on in my family when I was younger and my mom beating the shit out of me, if I tell the point about, let's say maybe the point of the email is, no matter how bad things were in your past, you can always improve. Let's say that's the point I want to make. That doesn't come across as whining or me seeking sympathy. It's just a very relatable email about, I started in a really shitty spot and I made something of it. So that's kind of the way I look at it. Yes, you guys will get the slides for this, plus all the swipes and all that. Stacy said, if you tell stories where you fail, will your clients lose faith in your abilities? Absolutely not. And it's actually a great way to teach a learning lesson of, like, I think Stefan does a good job of this in some of his emails where he'll talk about, maybe he'll talk about something like an offer that he wrote and it bombed. most people on his list probably think that doesn't happen to him. So it's very, very relatable for them when he's like, yeah, I wrote this and I was paid a bunch of money and it didn't work. And now I'm doubting myself and I'm wondering if I really know what I'm doing. That's going to be very, very relatable for a lot of the copywriters on his list. So no, it does not hurt you and does not make people lose faith in your abilities if you show some vulnerabilities and show some failures and rough edges and stuff like that. Max said, do you think these methods to be applied on social using these frameworks to create Twitter threads? Yeah. I mean, a lot of the same principles still definitely apply. Dylan said, did you write these types of emails when you were at Patriot Power Greens? Yes, I wrote the daily emails every day for that company. They were targeted to our audience, which was 60, 70, 80-year-old people. So, who are also very religious. So there was a lot of like religion worked into them and stuff like that. But yeah, I used the exact same kind of frameworks. Tom said, do the selfies at the end of your emails help build an even deeper bond with your readers? I think they do. Honestly, that wasn't the reason I did it. I just did it randomly I think I just randomly did it on an email last year and I got a bunch of responses from people saying they liked the picture. But I think it does set me apart a little bit from all the other people who send daily emails, and you get to see my face each day, which I think does create a little more of a bond. Sean said, also curious on your views as Ben Settle writes certain words in his style, guru. Should we add this to emails or just focus on stories, as it would seem we'd be trying to mimic another person's style? I think if that's something you would do and you want to do, feel free to do it. My big suggestion there is to don't try to emulate me. Don't try to emulate Ben. You can definitely follow the frameworks of how we write stuff. But if you try to write in the same style as we do, it's not going to come off as authentic. That's really the big thing to kind of keep in mind. Megan said, how do you keep writing even when you're not getting a ton of responses or buyers yet? Well, I mean, you have to actually enjoy writing. Like, I actually really enjoy writing. So if you don't enjoy writing, that's going to be an issue. I mean, I personally would probably write my email at least a few times a week, even if I was not making money, because I like sharing my thoughts and kind of putting them out there. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to finding topics and stuff that you actually want to talk about and share. Max said, which ESP would you recommend for someone just starting a list? I'm honestly not the person to ask for that because I just use Maripost, and while Maripost works really well for me, it's also really expensive. So it's not exactly what I would probably recommend for starting a list, but I know people do like Active Campaign. So I think maybe starting with something like Active Campaign would be a good idea. All right. So how's this been so far for you guys? Are you getting some value from it, learning stuff? Everett said, awesome, fantastic. This is great. Great. Super clear, doing a good job. Awesome. Cool. Thank you guys. All right. So let's talk about how to come up with endless ideas for what to write about. This is a big thing that a lot of people wanted to know. So I'll kind of give you what I do. So as we talked about, the beliefs and points that you want to talk about, those are the main things I think you should be writing about, and writing about those kind of constantly over and over again. Another one that I mentioned before is struggle stories. Struggle stories work really, really, really well. People just freaking relate with struggle stories more than anything, especially if they see you up here and you're kind of this guru or god or expert or whatever to them. You sharing stories of your struggles will always really relate. So a couple examples I've done, When I went broke in 2010, my first year in business, I made $3,600. I've shared examples of my copy bombing and feeling like a fraud. Struggle stories work really, really, really well. So if you got a good struggle story, definitely use it. Stories are shared experiences that your reader's going to have. So some of the ones I've used, making your first sale, like every single person who's created a product or created an offer online will remember very, very vividly the first sale they've ever made. I mean, I've had $500,000 days since then. I remember more about the first sale I made than I do about any of that other stuff. Someone not believing in you. So I had the story of my mom basically calling me a scammer and telling me that I was basically like a failure and not going to be successful and stuff like that. Not a lot of people probably have like a story that harsh, but pretty much everybody has a story of someone not believing in them. It's a very common kind of shared experience among entrepreneurs and copywriters and freelancers. So yeah, any kind of shared experience you can have telling those stories will work really well. Things that are in the news. You'll see a lot of this in the financial crypto, like most of their emails are based on kind of what's going on. And if you follow any of the financial like YouTube guys who are really big, who make 2 or 3 kind of videos a week, this is what they do. They basically just find the big stories that are in the news and talk about those. So, and I've used this in my emails as well. Like I've written multiple emails about how to combat inflation, what to do if there's a recession, all that type of stuff. So anything that's kind of in the news, people that are in the news, always kind of good to piggyback on that. So I wrote a whole email about Joe Rogan when his whole saga was going on. Joe Biden, Grant Cardone, anybody who's kind of in the news and that your niche is talking about, or they're posting about it on Facebook, or they're asking about it. These are always good things to write about. Oops. Problems your readers have. So what are the if you can just you should have some idea, some list of like what are the problems your readers have. So getting clients, writing faster, procrastination, working too much, at least in the copywriting realm, there's a lot of the issues that are going on. So you could simply write emails about the problems that your readers have. Another one I like to do a lot is doing a 3 or 4 day series on a specific topic. This is really easy to do, and I actually really enjoy doing them, and people get a lot out of them. So I did one recently on how to sell to men. It was basically like the inner psychology of what men really want when they buy things. I did one on non-business things that have changed my life. I did one on the hierarchy of getting rich. These are great when you do these because it's like your whole week is planned out. It's like, all right, I'm gonna do 4 emails on this topic, and I don't have to come up with a bunch of ideas every single day. I have a pretty good idea of what I'm gonna write about each day. Respond to a reader email. This is one I really just learned from Ben Settle. He's great at this, where he just takes questions that people send him and he responds to it in a fun and entertaining way and kind of gives his viewpoint. He's not just answering it directly and like, here's what you should do, da da da. He really gives a lot of his philosophy and his beliefs and works all that in there to make it fun. Advice to your younger self. I do a lot of these, which is like things I wish I knew 20 years ago. Those types of emails tend to do really, really well. So that's kind of where I would start in terms of what to write about. So like I said, the beliefs and points that you want to make, kind of start there and write about those things over and over. And then I gave you a whole list here that really you have an endless kind of list of ideas if you just kind of stick to these things. Cool. All right. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Feel free to grab some food, water, hit the bathroom, and then we're going to come back and we're going to go over emails that sell. So we've talked a lot about kind of the bonding style. Now we're going to really break down how to write emails that sell, and then we're going to go into how to build a list. So 10-minute break. We'll be back at, let's say, 40 after, and we'll jump in there. All right. We're going to jump back in. So like I said, we're going to finish here with personality driven emails that sell, and then we'll go over list building. So let's jump into the ones that sell. I think this will be really instructive to you guys. So I'm going to break down a whole promo I did for Stefan Georgi's RMBC course. This is the one I did on over July 4th this year. A lot of good little notes in here that I think will be helpful for you guys. So to give you kind of the background, this is a $1,000 course that we sold on a payment plan. So it was like, I don't know, I think you paid for it over 3 or 4 months. We did a full 6-day promo, which means I emailed my list for 6 days in a row about it. Important notes that you're going to see here. So people are conditioned to buy things around holiday sales. So every major retailer, car place, everything has holiday sales. So people tend to go and buy things when there's holiday sales. So if you can tie your promo into some type of holiday sale, this will differ depending on where you are in the world, obviously, because there's different holidays for different countries. But for like an American audience, it'd be things like Thanksgiving, New Year's, July 4th, St. Patty's Day. You can do your birthday. You can literally make up holidays, whatever you want to do. But I've found in my experience that things that are tied with holiday sales tend to do much, much better in sales. So second part of this is having a deadline on the offer. So human beings are not good at taking action on things, and usually we won't take action unless there's a deadline. I'll show you a good example of this when I did this promo. So this was the 6 days I promoted the course that's the training that you guys are on right now. And this is a pretty standard deviation of what happens. The first day is usually pretty good. Then things will drop second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day. And then the last day, a lot of people will sign up. That happens with pretty much every single promo I do. I'll show you. Pull back here. Very similar thing happened with this RMBC promo. So having a deadline on the offer, special pricing seems to work really the best. So like Stefan's thing was like a special payment plan that you couldn't get any other time. And if you wanted to do it on the payment plan, you had to buy it before that deadline. The one I did for this wasn't any type of special pricing, but there was a true deadline because I was teaching the thing today. So it was like you had to pay by last night. So having anytime you can work a real deadline in, it's going to increase the sales. 80% of your sales are going to come from the first day and the last day. Mostly the last day. 80% might be a little high. It's probably more like 65 to 70%, but it's a huge bulk of your sales are going to come from the first day and the last day. And the big thing here to remember is you should send more emails on the last day. I resisted this for a long time. I didn't like the idea of mailing people multiple times in a day. And then the first time I did it and I saw what the difference it made, I never stopped doing it since then. So that last day, a lot of people will come in, especially towards the end of the day. So on the last day, I tend to send like an email out in the morning, and then I'll do like 3 of them from 5 p.m. till midnight, or even 4 of them from 5 p.m. to midnight. And the amount of sales those emails make is massive. So I'll show you kind of the example with when I did the RMBC promo for Stefan. Day 1 did 9 sales, so a good start. Day 2 did 11 sales. That was actually pretty unusual to have the second day higher than the first. Day 3 did 4 sales. Day 4 did 7. Day 5 did 6. And the last day I did 43 sales. So a huge, huge kind of last day there. And like I said, so that is pretty standard. It'll kind of deviate a little bit, but the first and the last day is really where a lot of the money's going to be made if you're going to do these kind of week-long promos. And here's kind of the promo, how I did it. I did 1 email a day for all of these, and then the last day I did 3. So basically for, I don't know, 8 emails, ended up making, I think this one made like 35 grand, which is pretty good. So now I'm gonna break by the way, anybody have questions on any of that before I go in and break down kind of all these emails and how to actually use emails to sell? Cool. All right, we'll jump in. I got all the emails in here. And by the way, you guys are all going to get a copy of this in your swipe file. So when I'm doing a promo, like a 7-day promo, the first email I usually lead out with is just a straight selling email and just putting it out there that I'm selling something or I'm promoting something. I don't really do a lot of what we're kind of been talking about with the storytelling. Well, I'll do that in a lot of the other emails, but this one I really just kind of put it out there and just a very direct, and you'll see that here. So subject line is heads up. Hey, first name, just a heads up. Stefan Georgi, the guy considered the #1 copywriter in the world, is running a special 4th of July sale right now for his incredible copywriting course, RMBC. Course is normally $997. But during this sale, you can try it for just $97 up front and then pay the rest later. Now, if you're not familiar with Stefan or RMBC, here's what you should know. Stefan's written more offers that have scaled on cold traffic in the last 5 years than any other copywriter I know. That I really kind of emphasize this, saying this is the true test of your copywriting skills and why I consider him the #1 copywriter in the world right now. At one point, ClickBank had a top 10 list of their best performing offers, and Stefan had written 8 out of the top 10 offers on the list, which is pretty damn impressive if you ask me. Most copywriters like myself take 6 to 8 weeks to write a sales letter. Stefan's able to pump out an entire sales page in just 3 to 4 days. I'm going to show you how he does this in a minute. Stefan started out charging $149 for a sales letter and now charges a whopping $50,000 for a sales letter. So then I say, if you're a copywriter, modeling what he's doing would be in your best interest. His RMBC system is recommended by all the big dogs in our industry like V-Shred, Credit Secrets, Dan Ferrari, Craig Clemens, and more. Those are literally just, he had testimonials of all those people on his sales page, so I just use that as a bullet. I've seen brand new copywriters like John Robb and Michael Rasheen start following the RMBC method, and within a few months, they were making $10K to $15K a month writing copy. That's not an exaggeration either. So as you can see, RMBC is the real deal. So what did I do with all these kind of bullet points here? What stood out to you about that? What does it look like I'm trying to do here? Feel free to pop your thoughts in the chat. Florian said social proof, tons of credibility. Yep. Authority. So yeah, really, really all of that. So these are really just what I kind of call wow factors. So like when I hear things or I read things in the sales letter that I think are really interesting, like the fact that Stefan had written 8 out of the 10 top offers on ClickBank, I was like, wow, holy shit, that's pretty crazy. Or the fact that he can write a sales letter in 3 to 4 days, I'm like, wow, that's impressive. So I'm really trying to put out there that and build up this proof and this credibility that he really is the best copywriter in the world. I like inserting this one in here as well, because like for a newer copywriter to know that Stefan started at the bottom, just like him, charging $149, that's a really kind of cool thing for them to know. And then, yeah, just personal experience seeing copywriters that I know who have followed RMBC and seeing what they've kind of done and that they can make money quickly. So if a new copywriter's reading this who hasn't really made a whole lot of money and they see that, oh, these two guys did it and we're making 10K to 15K a month within a few months, that's pretty appealing. So that's kind of why I do that with a lot of the bullets. So as you can see, RMBC is the real deal. It's always the first copy course I recommend when people ask me, which is why I'm pumped that Stefan put the course on sale for the 4th of July. This way you can try it for just $97 and you can pay the rest later if you write the course. And honestly, his course has a lot of tie-ins to July 4th. So we mentioned before tying things that are in the news and what's going on and what's on your list mind. During holidays, the holidays are going to be on their mind. So I'm tying that in as well. 4th of July is all about freedom and marks the day that the United States broke away from Britain and became our own country. And ironically, you can get that same kind of freedom with RMBC, the freedom to do your own thing, to make your own schedule, and to make as much money as you please. I wouldn't have a 7-figure net worth today had I not gotten good at copywriting. But knowing what I know now, I wish I would have had a course like RMBC when I was learning copy. Because I spent a lot of years trying to learn copy on my own. And that resulted in lots of wasted time, plenty of bad copy, and my income not really going up. So I suggest you not following my footsteps on that one. My advice, just learn directly from the guy that's the #1 active copywriter in the world these days. He's already done all the grunt work, and he put what he learned into an easy step-by-step system that allows you to write winning sales pages, VSLs, emails, and ads. So that's kind of an important point. I make sure to try to address all the copy stuff there, because a lot of people are going to email me and ask me like, oh, does this work for VSLs? Does this work for emails? Can I use this for ads? So I make sure to really cover that. That's what RMBC does for you. And like I said earlier, it's usually $9.97, but during this special 4th of July deal, you can try it for just $97 and pay the rest later. That's a hell of a deal if you ask me. So whether you're a copywriter yourself or you have your own offers or simply looking to get into copywriting, this part's really important because those are the 3 different kind of people that are on my list. I have copywriters, I have business owners, and then I have people who are just kind of in normal jobs and looking to get into copywriting or start a business. So I make sure they all know that this is relevant for them. So I highly recommend snapping up Stefan's RMBC course. If you've been on my list for a while, you know I don't endorse many things. But when I do recommend something, it's something I truly believe in. That's how I feel about RMBC. So I suggest you grab a copy today while Stefan is having his 4th of July sale. You can get all the details and see what's in the course right here. I wouldn't wait too long, though. The sale's only good for a couple days, so make sure you check it out while you can. Here's the link again. Boom. And then kind of ends it. So that is pretty indicative of how I would usually send out the first email that I'm going to send out. It's just a pretty direct pitch. Lots of proof, lots of credibility, as you guys noticed. And then really just hammering home the value that's there and why I really believe they should buy it. So let's look at email number 2. So this went out on the 2nd day. At the time I sent this out, there was a lot of talk in Facebook groups and other email lists about a recession coming. So my subject line was where I'd put my money in a recession. So I'm tapping into what's on their mind at the time. I start this one with a story. Back in 2021, my buddy Ian Stanley invited me to speak at his event and share my investing strategy. However, most of what I recommended was not your typical investments. It wasn't stocks or real estate or crypto. All those things are great, and I have money in all of them. But the #1 investment I recommended, and this is especially relevant if we wind up in a recession, is something far less known. In fact, this investment gave me a 116x return in just a few years, made me a multimillionaire, and allowed me to do cool things like sit courtside for the NBA Finals, donate $25,000 to my favorite dog rescues, and even help one of my friends pay all his medical bills when he had stage 4 cancer. So what was this great investment? By the way, I want to just note on this really quick. Making a bunch of money is obviously a great benefit and what a lot of people want, but then getting specific about the things you could do with that money is really kind of crystallizes it and makes it real. So me talking about things I've been able to do, and I don't just hit on like I hit on, it's not just like me with a Ferrari and a big house and stuff like that. There are cool things. Yeah. Sitting courtside at the NBA Finals. Awesome. But also donating money to a dog rescue and then helping my buddy who was going through cancer, help him to pay all of his medical bills. That kind of is a nice balance of not only doing cool things for myself, but also being able to do cool things for others. And I think that really connects with a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So what was the great investment? Like I said, it wasn't stocks, real estate, or crypto. It was investing in a money-making skill. Specifically, I invested a lot of money to get good at copywriting. And as a result of that investment, my income went through the roof. In 2008, I made around $40K a year. In 2013, I made around $200K. 2015, I made over 700K. And in 2016, I made just shy of 2.2 million, which was life-changing money for me. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy making seven figures, but I did it. And I've been able to make seven figures pretty much every year since then, except for 2008 when I took a full year sabbatical. So when I spoke at Ian's event last year, I really emphasized this point about investing in your skills. Why? Because in my mind, it's the best investment you can make. If you go from making 50K a year to 200K a year because your copy skills got better, that's an ROI you're not going to get anywhere else. This is really obvious to me now, but it took a long time to grasp. And here's the thing. You won't read about this in most personal finance books. They'll tell you just to invest your money in an index fund or to buy some real estate. And while both those things are fine and dandy, they aren't going to increase your income like investing in a money-making skill will. And then I go into a lot of proof here. So I'm like, I've seen this firsthand with copywriters and business owners I've coached. And I can just give a couple examples here. Is Krista Edsel went from being a bartender making 50K a year to a copywriter who was on pace to make 120K. Scott Mills went from a good writer making 200K a year, and now he's on pace to hit 420K. Steve Gunn, who's a business owner, had a CBD offer that was floundering, but now he has an 8-figure business that's pumping out cash left and right. So I'm making sure to really hit on a couple different things here. Newer copywriters who are kind of experienced, and then business owners. And I also try to have a mix of men and women in there, since my list tends to be more like 70% men. So there's going to be more male examples, but I definitely want to have female examples as well. All three of these people saw a huge leap in their income simply because they invested in their copy and marketing skills, which brings me to my point. If you want to make a lot of money, even in a recession, so tying back in with the recession thing, then you should invest in leveling up your copy skills. That's how I hit 7 figures in income and turned into a multimillionaire at the age of 33. I got serious about getting good at copy. Now, obviously, there's a ton of courses and coaching groups that can help you get good at copy, but my recommendation for the best bang for your buck is to do it is Stefan's RMBC course. So up until this point, I haven't really, this is just a good kind of story bonding type email. Now I'm going to go into the pitch and really pitch the RMBC course. So I talk about how I think it's hands down the best copywriting course. And I go into a lot of the stuff that I talked about in the first email, really hyping up Stefan's credibility, because I don't want to rely on the fact that they read that previous email. A lot of people reading this email did not read that previous one. So I'm going to really go back into it, talking about how he wrote more winning sales letters than anyone else in the last 5 years. His track record's unmatched. I think he's the #1 active copywriter in the world today. And it's not just him getting results with RMBC. His students are getting insane results as well. And I name off bunch of the students who I know have done really, really well with RMBC. And then I talk about business owners as well, because I really want this to be apparent that whether you're a copywriter, whether you're a business owner, or whether you're just kind of got a normal job, you're trying to learn how to make money online, that this is for you. So if you're serious about making more dough, I suggest you invest in RMBC. Normally the price is $9.97. At that price, it's a steal, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's very much the same exact pitch as you saw in the first one, talking about the pricing. So we've done 2 emails for the RMBC one. Do you guys, any questions before I kind of keep going through these? My emails usually take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to write. A lot of times I will just reuse the pitch at the end from the previous ones. So usually the pitch I don't usually rewrite. I just slap that on the end. But yeah, anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. Tracy said, I've noticed your font size is bigger than many of my other emails. Yeah. I just learned that when I just used to do a ton of email traffic, I tested font size a lot, and the bigger fonts always did better. The conversion rates were always better. It's just easier to read, easier on your eyes. Especially if you have a older demo, like when we did our health stuff, it was 60 to 80-year-olds. So bigger font worked much, much better in that niche. But even, I mean, most people don't have great vision. Even people in their 30s don't have great vision. So I think making bigger font sizes is really smart. Forrest says that transition is killer. Do you have any recommendations on making a smooth transition like this from content to selling? Yeah, really let's see where we're at. The way I tend to do it is I have a transition sentence like this, where it's like, which brings me to my point, or here's what I want you to take away from this, something like that. And then I go into a little bit of the build up, and then it would start pitching it. That's pretty much how I do it in every single email. Do you strategize the flow before you write all 7? Do you write as you go along? I tend to write out ideas of maybe like 7 different things that I could potentially write about. So I'll make a Google Doc with like, okay, here's a good thing I want to hit on. Here's another thing I want to hit on. I'll share a little bit of this at the end of this one, where it's like, okay, writing faster. I know that's a big problem. So maybe I want to hit on that. Or let's see what else. Making more money as a copywriter. Maybe that's something I want to hit on. Yeah, the recession thing. Like I said, what are things that are on people's minds? So at that time, it was very obvious that a lot of people were talking about recession. So I kind of try to get a rough idea of like 7 to 10 ideas that I want to write about throughout the week, and then just kind of pick and choose from there. John said, do you flow write and then edit it down? Yeah, I'm a much better editor than I am a writer. So I tend to just write everything. And then I spend actually a lot more time on editing than I actually do on writing. So yeah, I'm very big on editing and kind of dialing it into how I want it. Ricardo said, you write a meta view of the campaign and then build on it, or were all of them ad lib? Yeah, I think I kind of explained that. Probably just did it. Any tips on coming up with subject lines? I mean, that's so the best subject lines tend to have curiosity and a benefit in them. So I tend to focus on that. The cool thing about when you get good at the personality driven emails, the subject lines don't matter anywhere near as much, because people just start opening the emails just because it's you. Whereas if you're doing like a churn and burn list and you're just sending offers nonstop, that's not going to be the case. And the subject lines are going to have a huge impact on the open rates. So honestly, I don't give a ton of thought to my subject lines because from what I've seen with my open rates, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. Travis said, is there a reason behind the style of 1 or 2 text lines and then a line break? Do people have a problem with reading emails in this style? No, I mean, it's well, the reason behind kind of keeping them short and punchy is it's just a lot easier to read. If you put in big blocks of copy and big blocks of text, it's a lot harder to read. So short and punchy is how you really want to write the majority of the time. Tommy said, what font and font size do you use? Do you change it for business bonding emails? No, I don't change it. I think mine's size 22 Arial. I know a lot of people have kind of mimicked and copied that, which is fine. But yeah, bigger fonts tend to do better. Matthew asked, is Maripost setting your margins, or are you defining them? So I define them. I had a programmer basically make a template in Maripost that I want to say it's maybe 400 pixels wide, maybe a little wider. But yeah, so that way it kind of keeps it a little more compact. Cool. Let's move to the 3rd email. So email number 3 in this series. Number 1 skill that made me $2.2 million in a year. And this is kind of a good story-based email that I will really kind of relate to people. So when I was younger, I never had any idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I didn't have dreams of being a fireman or an astronaut like many of my friends. However, I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. That was evident from the get-go. When I was 10, I would race around on my bike from garage sale to garage sale and sell baseball cards to anyone who'd buy them. If I was able to sell a Jose Canseco rookie card for a few dollars, more than it was worth, then that would make my day. I'd be grinning ear to ear. The simple feeling of being able to make my own money without relying on someone else was liberating. I felt like my own person, like I had control of my life. And that sense of independent hustle never went away. After selling, because after baseball cards, it was selling WWE action figures on eBay. And when I got to college, it was me promoting poker sites as a poker affiliate back during the poker boom of the early 2000s. All those little side hustles got bigger and bigger as I got older. It made me fall in love with doing my own thing, which eventually led me to copywriting. So as you see this kind of setting up, this is really targeted at the people on my list that are not doing their own thing, but really want to do their own thing. So this is going after the person who's kind of what we would call a biz op buyer. They're buying opportunities to make money, trying to figure out ways to make money online. And this is really who I'm kind of targeting with this email. So all those side hustles got bigger and bigger. It made me fall in love with doing my own thing. And that eventually led me to copywriting. That's where I've made my hay for the last 12 years. Some of those years were a struggle where I only pulled in 30K or so, while others were very fat. I took home over $2 million. But the key component of it all, whether I was running my own business or whether I was working with clients, was killer copy. That's what gave me freedom. That's what allowed me to do my own thing. And I went from scraping by on 2K a month to regularly having $125,000 months, which is a huge leap in income. But that kind of brings me to the point of this email. So here's the transition. If you want to have the kind of freedom I've been able to have, or you want to make the kind of money I've been able to make, getting good at copy is, in my opinion, the fastest way to do that. That's what I did. And I've seen it work for a lot of the big dogs you see today, like Craig Clemens, Carleen Anglade Cole, Ian Stanley, and more. So if you're interested in getting good at copy so that you can have the freedom and money to do whatever you want, then I suggest you take a look at Stefan Georgi's copywriting system, RMBC. There's a reason RMBC is used by $200 million brands like V-Shred, and why copy wizards like Craig Clemens, Dan Ferrari, and Pauline Longden all give it their stamp of approval. It flat out works. RMBC produces insane results, but more importantly, it's easy to follow. Stefan takes a complicated thing, writing copy, and breaks it down into a simple templated process that a 12-year-old could follow. So this is really important because the people I'm writing to are not copywriters. They're not business owners. They probably think copywriting is this super complicated, scary thing. So I'm really hammering on the idea that RMBC takes this complicated thing and makes it simple, templated kind of process. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines when it comes to copy, let this be a wake-up call for you, because for the next 2 days, Stefan's having a special 4th of July sale on his RMBC system. Normally, RMBC is $997. Even at that price, it's a steal. However, for the next 2 days, you can test drive it for just $97 up front and pay the rest later if you like. That's a hell of a deal if you ask me. And so this kind of pitch here at the end is, like I said, very similar to the pitches that we had on the previous emails. So yeah, that was email number 3. Really, like I said, going after that people in a normal job who have higher ambitions of trying to figure out how to make money online, trying to do a side hustle, whatever that might be. All right, a couple questions that rolled in. Dan said, I noticed you don't use a preview text to go along with your subject line. What's your thoughts on including them? Honestly, I've just never done it. And I don't know if it would add anything. I don't know. I've always done fine without it. So I might be missing out on some stuff without it, but it's not really a big thing I care about. If I'm writing for a client, what questions should I ask in order to get enough information so I can write as if I'm them? You really need to really interview them and get their story. So a lot of the stuff that they believe in, you want to get stories about kind of how they got into their business or how they got into what they're doing. Like they probably have some type, if they're a gut health expert, like why did they get into gut health? Like that, there has to be a story there. Problems they've had with gut stuff, people they've helped, those stories you can just use over and over and over again. Yeah, really the more stories you can get from people, the better. And then really building out that list of what are the main things they kind of believe and preach that they want to teach. So that's kind of what I'd focus on. All right, email number 4. So as a reminder, we're going through the RMBC promo breakdown. Email number 4, subject line, I can't believe I said this. So one of the stupidest things I used to believe was that copywriters who used the system to write copy weren't very good copywriters. Why did I believe this? Because I personally never used the system to write copy myself. I basically wrote every sales page differently. I would start from scratch and agonize for weeks over how I was going to start the copy. I didn't have a process for research or how to write my lead. It was all a big jumbled mess. So why am I telling this story? So the big reason I'm using this story here is because this is a very, very common problem that copywriters have, is that they don't have any type of system or template or process. That every new project, they're starting from a blank slate, and it's this huge, agonizing, time-consuming thing to write the copy. It's why copy takes so long to write. So I'm sharing that, a very kind of personal story of mine of how I was a freaking idiot and used to do this. And I don't want them to kind of do the same thing. So it usually took me a full 6 to 8 weeks to finish a sales page. So it was a slog and I wasted a lot of time. But what's even crazier is that I never thought taking 6 to 8 weeks was an issue. I thought copy had to take a long time to write, and that's just the way it was. However, my views eventually changed on that, and it was all because of Stefan Georgi. Because when I met Stefan, one of the first things he showed me was a winning sales letter he had written in just 2 days. Seriously, 2 days. I couldn't believe it. What's even crazier was that at the time, he was writing around 8 sales letters per month. I had no idea that was even possible. So my reality for how fast you could write copy was completely shattered by Stefan. But after having watched Stefan over the last few years, I now understand it. I get why he's able to write so quickly. And it's because he has a simple, repeatable system that he follows each time he writes. So that's a big point I'm hammering home, that if you want to write faster, you have to have a simple, repeatable system. There's no guesswork or long, drawn out creative process. He follows his system called RMBC. He's able to write sales pages in 2 to 3 days when it takes most copywriters 6 to 8 weeks. This is why I'm such a big supporter of RMBC and why I hope you snag a copy of RMBC while he has it on sale. This goes into the pitch. You've seen this pitch a couple times already. Closes, like I said, very similar pitch that we're doing in every single one of these. But yeah, that was really what I would consider. I told a relatable story, and then I also tapped into a big problem that I know copywriters have, which is it takes too long to write. They write too slow. They can't get enough projects done. They want to be able to write faster, and so I tapped into that. Alrighty, email number 5. So I actually don't have the subject line for this one, so I'm not sure what it was, but so one of the best persuasion secrets I ever learned came from my buddy Joe, who's a dating coach. Here's the story. Joe and I were out at a bar on Rainy Street a few years ago, and we bumped into a couple girls we knew. One of the girls, her and I had been chatting for a few weeks on Instagram. However, it kind of stalled there. We hadn't been on a date or hung out together, so I wasn't sure if it was going anywhere. I could tell she was interested in me, but it felt like there was a little hesitation on her part. Like she was interested, but not enough to meet up with me. However, when we ran into her and her friend at the bar, Joe said something that completely changed that. Basically, after chatting for a bit, I excused myself and went to the restroom. While I was gone, my buddy Joe pulled the girl aside that I was into and started talking me up. He told her about how I went from a pretty meager upbringing in small town Ohio to building multiple 7-figure businesses on my own. He told her about my passion for dogs and helping dog rescues, and how I've helped a bunch of my friends to leave their 9-to-5 jobs and start their own businesses. Then right before I got back, he ended it with saying I'm one of the best dudes he knows and that she'd be lucky to go out with me. Now, I had no idea any of this was going on while I was standing in line for the bathroom, but when I got back to the group, I could tell the vibe had completely switched. Suddenly, this girl wasn't indifferent to me. She was super into me. She was playfully hitting me on the arm and laughing at things I said that weren't even funny. It was a complete 180, and it all happened because of Joe talking me up. I mean, I could have said those same things myself, but it wouldn't have had the same effect as Joe saying it. Now, this is where we're going to transition, and here's an important lesson in here. Having someone else say good things about you is extremely powerful when it comes to persuasion. It works in dating, it works in copy. In fact, Stefan Georgi has done an incredible job of this on the recent mini sales letter he wrote for RMBC that you can see here. So this is just a really kind of good tease to get them to click through and look at what I'm talking about. He's brilliantly leveraged big names in the marketing world like myself, Dan Ferrari, Nick Daniel, and Craig Clemens. and highlighted all the good things we had to say about his copy skills. And when you couple all that credible proof with a great offer, that's when you have magic. That's when the sales roll in. So remember, what others say about you is 10 times more powerful than what you say about yourself. And then I actually do a PS pitch here. PS, just really, like I said, very similar to what all the other kind of pitches were with the end. So question that came in: how do you come up with stories that just happen on any random day, like an email 5 from the RMBC promo? Do you reflect on what happened every day and make notes? Things tend to just come up, and you'll start to kind of connect the dots. So like I always remember there was one when I was going through the airport, and they had like a light system for like going through security of like when you should walk through and when you should not. But for some reason they did it. The one to go through was a red light, and the one to like stay, I think, was like a green light or a yellow light. And it made no sense because that's not the light colors that people understand. So it was super confusing. And there's this big like pile up of people not knowing whether you should walk through or what you should do. That was very obvious to me. I'm just like, this is super confusing and super stupid that they did this. And so I related that to people landing on your website or landing on your VSL or being on your checkout page and being confused, because confused people don't act. They just stand there and kind of freak out. They don't know what to do. They don't want to make a mistake. So they don't want to make a mistake, so they don't do anything. So I wrote a whole email about that story, and it was like, the same thing happens on your website or the same thing happens on your checkout page. If people are confused, they're not going to buy. So you don't want to have confusion going on. You want things to be super clear about, here's what you need to do. Take this step, then take this step. So really trying to, the more you do this, you'll start to find stories, and you'll just be able to kind of connect little things like, oh, that I talk about this a lot, and that story just happened, and that proves I can tie that point in with that story. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It is one of those things you'll just get better at over time, the more you do this. Are you able to convert your story writing in some kind of little framework that we can follow to make it easier for us to write up these stories? I would say really just follow you're going to get all these examples. So I would say really just kind of study how I do the stories in here. That's going to be the most effective way. So study through like this RMBC one and then the other ones that I share, and really just kind of see how the stories are broken down. I don't have a full like template for that kind of thing. But I think you could pick it up pretty easily just kind of looking at these. All right. Email 6, final day of the sale. So this is what I mentioned earlier. The final day is when a lot of the sales come in. I think this one, it was like 40 some sales. So really want to hammer it home with a lot of stuff. So the last day of the sale, I always send out the morning of just a very direct email that this is the last day of the sale. And if you want to get in on it, you need to do it before whatever the time expires. So subject line, bad news. This subject line, I remember, was like a big deal in like 2004, and everybody was using it, and it still freaking crushes 15 years later. Always does great. I don't like being the bearer of bad news, but this morning I need to be. Here's the deal. I've been telling you for the last 5 days about the special 4th of July sale that Stefan's having for his incredible copywriting course, RMBC. Well, unfortunately, that sale ends today, and after it ends, the price is going to go back to $997. So that's the bad news. The good news is that you still have the rest of today to snag the course for just $97 up front, and you can pay the rest at a later date. So basically, you get to test drive the course to see if you like it. And if you like it, you simply pay the rest at a later date, which is an awesome deal. However, that awesome deal ain't lasting forever. The cart will close at 11:59 p.m. tonight, and Stefan won't be reopening it tomorrow or letting people in who missed the deadline. So I highly recommend you grab a copy before then if you want it. With RMBC, you're basically getting to learn from the Michael Jordan of copywriting. And if you put RMBC to use, you can write winning sales pages that command fees of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 or more. Or you can use RMBC on your own offers to increase the conversions and AOV on your sales pages. So I'm addressing both copywriters and business owners. In my opinion, this is the best copywriting course out there for 2 reasons. So here's where I'm going to kind of try to set RMBC apart from all the other copy courses. I've seen it produce the best results out of any course on the market. I'm talking about Stefan's track record and the track record of other copywriters I've coached who are using it. Secondly, unlike most copy courses, this isn't theory. It's a simple templated process that's repeatable no matter what your skill level is with copy. And then I go into a bunch of examples as we saw before, with Michael Rasheen being kind of the newbie example, went from newbie to making 12K a month. Scott Mills being the more advanced, who is now making 420 grand a year writing copy. And then Nick Daniels, Steve Gunn, who are doing 1,000 buyers a day with their offers using RMBC. So for me, the proof is in the pudding. RMBC flat out works. And if you're serious about putting out good copy, then you need this course. So if that piques your interest, I highly suggest you grab a copy before the price leaps to $9.97 at midnight tonight. All the details on the course and what you get can be found at the link below. Boom, link. So that's the final email on the last day. This one I sent probably midday. This was a topic that had been coming up in a bunch of Facebook groups. I knew it'd be a controversial one. I got a really good open rate. Literally the subject line, fraudulent copy coaches. So that really kind of, like I said, just tapping into what people are thinking about. And if you can add a tinge of controversy to it, even better. So in my opinion, the best way to judge a copy coach is not by how good their copy is, but by how well their students are doing. Here's what I mean by that. I could name dozens of great copywriters off the top of my head, people who write winner after winner and are pulling in a lot of dough. But here's the rub. Just because a copywriter is good at writing copy doesn't mean they can teach someone else how to write like them. Why? Because in order to help people get results, you need to systematize your process. It has to be easy to understand and simple to mimic. That way, someone who doesn't know much about copy can still get results. Well, I can tell you from experience that a large number of good copywriters cannot do this. Why? Because many of them are just naturally talented writers, and they've been writing copy for so long that it's second nature to them. So they're not able to break it down and show you how to do it. Now, this part, I kind of go into a story of a good analogy with this. So it reminds me of one of my high school buddies, Pat, who I used to skateboard with. When I started skating, Pat was already good, and he was landing kick flips, heel flips, and ollieing downstairs. However, when he tried to teach me how to do these tricks, he couldn't do it. Why? Because Pat was a natural on a skateboard. It came easy to him. He didn't sit in his garage all winter long like I did, trying kick flips for hours on end each night. He didn't have the bruised up shins or the bad falls on his wrist like I did. He was just naturally good at skating. Well, the same thing happens with copywriters. Some writers are just naturally talented. And I think this is where Stefan sets himself apart from most other copy teachers, because not only can he write insanely good copy himself, but he's probably even better at teaching it. Seriously, his RMBC system isn't a bunch of copy theory. It's an actual templated and repeatable process that I show examples again that we've seen a couple times. Even through one of the good examples in here of Kimmy Do, who was 16 years old at the time when she started training under Stefan and landed a 5K a month client. So that's a really cool kind of story to use, because it's like, or example to use, because it's like, oh, if a 16-year-old could do it, like I could do it. So as you can see, RMBC works, and it works for pretty much everyone who uses it, no matter what their skill level is. So if you want to get better at copy and you don't have a copy of RMBC yet, I highly recommend you snag one for yourself. Blah, 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 blah. Cool. I think there's one more here. This one is really cool. I've used this many times. So this is the last email that went out that day. Subject line, did you see this? The one thing I changed on here, so this did not come from me. It came from my assistant, Lori. So instead of it saying, Justin Goff, did you see this? It said, Lori Mitchell, did you see this? And so it's really just a, hey, first name, Justin's out at dinner tonight, so he wanted me to make sure you saw this before it expires in a few hours. Lori Mitchell, Justin's assistant. And then I literally just repasted the email that we sent at the beginning of the day. That email got crazy amount of opens, made a crazy amount of sales. You can do this in a number of ways. Like you could do it with your wife, your dog. Obviously, like with your dog, it'd be a funny kind of like joke. Your assistant, whoever you want to use it with. It works really, really well. And it's a great way to get people opening and reading. So yeah, it just promotes it again. Like I said, it was the exact same email that we sent out in the morning, and that worked really, really well. So that whole promo, like I said, it was like a 6-7 day promo. It did like $35,000 in commissions for me. Couple things I just really want to point out here of what I was writing about. So always what's on their mind. So recession, fraudulent copy coaches. This was during July 4th. So obviously like a holiday's on their mind. I tied that in with a lot of stuff. Struggle stories. People love when you write stories about you struggling with stuff. So I wrote that. Wow facts. Basically, Stefan having 8 out of the 10 top ClickBank offers. Stefan writing sales letters in 2 days. Those are super like interesting facts and things to write about because it's like, oh, holy shit. And then pain points. So what are the pain points that the people reading this have? So writing too slow, not knowing what's right. Those are all big pain points that I know come up over and over again. So that's really how I structured that whole thing. If you guys have any questions, let's do that now, and then we'll go into the list building part and then kind of wrap up for the day. But if you have any questions about this 6-7 day promo that I did for RMBC and how to write emails that sell, feel free to pop those in the chat. Tom said, how did you structure these affiliate deals from a financial perspective? Is it case by case? Most affiliate deals for info products, yeah, so it really depends. So the higher priced ones you get less. So like Stefan with RMBC, I get 50%. So for 50%, like I said, it's $1,000 sale. I'm getting 500 for each sale. If you're doing lower ticket stuff, they'll usually give you a higher percentage. So they might give you 90% or sometimes even 100% because they just want the customer. But yeah, they'll usually have a standard kind of number that they're doing, and then if you're a bigger affiliate, you can usually negotiate and get more. So yeah, that's what it really is, kind of a case by case basis, and a lot of it really depends on how many sales you're able to drive. The more sales you're able to drive, the more you can negotiate and get paid more. Stacy said, do you write all these at once? I do not. I write them each morning. I've never been able to write them all at once. It just, my brain gets fried too easily. Michael said, your next promo, how different from the structure of this one? Sometimes I honestly use the same emails over. These emails were pretty similar to a previous because I've promoted RMBC, I think 3 times to my list. So they're all pretty similar. I mean, I know other people do that. Ben Settle does it a lot for like some of his certain holiday promos. He's been sending out the same emails for 3 years for certain promos. So you can definitely do that if you want. Anybody else question before we move on to list building? Stacy said, you take the pic with your cell phone. Yep, I just take it with my iPhone. Michael said, do you change the subject line? You can. Yeah, I think if you're gonna reuse the same emails, it'd probably be smart to switch up the subject lines. Definitely. You could even switch up like maybe the first sentence in the email as well if you're able to. But yeah, I think it's really kind of individual. There will definitely be certain people on your list who will realize that you've sent that email before, but I would say the large majority will not be able to realize that. Tommy said, do you like to always use lowercase on the subject line? I tend to. I don't think it makes a big difference either way. I think it's most of mine tend to be lowercase though. James said, how long is too long for a sale promo? I tend to do mine mine are usually a week. I've seen like 10 days. I wouldn't probably go any longer than that. Yeah, I think a week to 10 days. Horace said, what would be the ideal delay between reusing emails or very similar emails that perform well for an offer? I think you could do it twice a year. Like if you're going to, like I could run this same promo 6 months from now, and use pretty similar emails. I think it'd be fine. Stacy said, do you ever write short emails? I noticed they're all pretty long. Not really. Mine tend to be pretty long. Giovanni, when have you started your own email list? I started this email list in 2018. So I've had it for about 4 years now. Michael, I've just warmed a cold list for 5 days and then gone for 5 days a story promo. Your thoughts? Yeah, I think it's good, man. You'll definitely, I mean, when you reignite a list, you're definitely gonna get people that unsubscribe. That's normal. I wouldn't be freaking out if you get unsubscribers. That's fine. Because you want people on your list that want to hear from you every day. The people who are gonna like bitch and complain about that you're sending emails every day, you don't want them on your list anyway. So I wouldn't worry about that. Andrew said, how do you feel about having a 12-month sequence pre-made for all new subscribers? That's a strategy I've seen before. Yeah, I know people that do that. And it works. If it's working, I mean, who am I to say? Who am I to say not to do that? I think it really depends. Because I mean, if you're some people like if you're really good with driving opt-ins and then you the numbers of your sequence and it's dialed in, like that's a great business. I mean, I would love to have 12 months worth of emails dialed in that I know are going to make me X amount of money for every new opt-in I put in. That'd be freaking awesome. But yeah, so I mean, if you can do it, I think it's a cool idea. John said, thoughts on including an image of a product. If you're pitching pretty obvious about your pitch, like I do in these emails, I think you could. It really depends on the product. So like I'm doing the promo for Todd Brown has a massive like swipe file that I'm gonna do a promo for later this month, and I have all of the swipe files at my house. It's like 5 big binders. I might do a picture or a video with those binders in my email, because that's something like physical that would actually be kind of cool to show, like, oh, here's all the stuff you're getting. So I think if it's a situation like that, I would definitely be up for it. Obviously something like RMBC, it's a digital course, like it's kind of hard to show that in a picture, but yeah, I think it's probably really depends on what the product is. Tommy said, is there a minimum amount of emails to have pre-made before starting list building? I mean, I would have a couple ready to go for sure, so that as soon as people are getting on your list, they're getting emails each day. Yeah, I mean, you really just got to get in the habit of writing kind of each day. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. I personally, like I said, I personally don't do the autoresponder or anything like that. They get on, they get an email list, or I mean, they get on, they get like one autoresponder from me, basically welcoming them to the email list, and then they just get plopped onto the daily emails. Anybody else questions before we move on to list building? Then we'll wrap up for the day. Rob said, do you think emails every day is really worth it as opposed to 3 to 4 times a week? Great question, Rob. So I used to be in the twice a week category when I had my health company, and then we moved to 4 times a week. And then I remember talking to my buddy Jason Capital at the time, and he was like, yeah, we switched to 7 times a week. And I was like, wow. I was like pretty shocked. And the thing I've realized is every single time every single time I was wrong on this. I thought sending less emails would be better because you're not bugging the people and you're not going to get as many unsubscribes. But the reality is, if you're mailing every day, it's much better in terms of your deliverability is much better, but also you just more chances to bond and more chances to write better emails. So if people are actually looking forward to your emails, I look at it like as I mentioned, I listen to Howard Stern a lot when I'm driving. Like when there's days when Howard's not on the radio, like I get kind of bummed out because I want to listen to him. Same thing with your emails. If people like your emails, they want to hear from you as much as possible. So, and also when it comes down to money, especially if you're promoting in every email or promoting a good amount, the more you mail, the more money you're going to make. It's just very obvious when you look at the stats. John said, when you go on vacation, just stop writing or write, say a week's worth away when you're away. I think that's very independent or dependent on who the person is. So when I used to take vacations where I still kind of worked, I would still write the email while I was there. Like I wouldn't do any other work, but that would be like the one thing I would do in the morning. It really depends. Like sometimes if I just want to totally unplug and I'm literally not taking my laptop with me and I'm taking a 7-day break and I'm not doing anything, then I just won't write emails that week. And I'll usually send an email to my list or mention it a few times, kind of leading up to it that like, hey, I'm going to take 7 days off. But yeah, I think it just depends on what you want to do. Tom said, I've seen your emails posted on your website, almost like a blog. Any pros and cons to doing this? The pros are, it gives me a good way to, because a lot of people are like, oh, I missed this email or something, and it gives me an easy way to link to it. Also, I do get a decent amount of SEO traffic, and then people wind up joining my list. So those are definitely the pros to it. I'm not sure if there's any. I mean, the cons are it takes an extra 15 minutes to do, but my assistant does mine, so I don't have to actually do it. But yeah, I think it's a smart thing to do. Cool. All right. Well, let's jump into list building, and then we'll wrap up for the day. All right. So a lot of you guys asked about how to build an email list. This could be its own course in itself. But I'm going to share with you kind of my 4 favorite ways that have worked really well for me with my current list. With my previous list, like at the health supplement company, our whole list was just bought off of, or it was not bought, sorry, it was built off of buyers. So we would run ads from Facebook or from emails or native traffic or wherever we're running traffic. We would get people to buy our supplements. And as soon as they bought the supplement, they would be put onto our list. Most of the big lists that you'll see in like health and financial are built like that. They're built off of buyers. This kind of, like I said, it kind of depends what niche you're in, what you're trying to do. I found it, I haven't done that with my current list. This list has been mostly built just off leads and opt-ins, and I'm going to kind of show you guys that now. So one thing to note here, building an email list is not something that you do in a week. I always struggle having the conversation about list building with people because people tend to want a magic bullet and they're never happy with the actual answers I give them because they either require money or they require effort on their part. So you're not just going to have a huge list tomorrow or a month from now. It really does take time and it takes consistent effort to build. So like I said, I mentioned, you either need to spend money or you need to spend time to build a list. And I'm going to show you kind of some ways to do that. To give you kind of kind of a good look at mine. The first 2 years I had my list, I think it was less than 1,000 people. So that would have been 2018, 2019. Now it's 9,300 people, which is still not, I mean, there's people with much bigger lists than mine in the kind of internet marketing space. But I'm still able to make really good money and do really well sales wise because of the bond that I have with my list. So what's worked best for me? Let's go through this. This was something I started doing in 2021, which is basically just paying affiliates to mail to my opt-in page. So this is a picture of the opt-in page. I did this with a couple different affiliates, and I'm gonna kind of show you an example of this. How I started it was found an affiliate that I knew the best and who I know would be down to mail it. So my friend Ian, I basically was like, I'll pay you $10,000 to send 3 emails for my opt-in. Ian sent me about 1,600 opt-ins, which was very good. That was more than I thought. My idea in my head was like, if I could get 1,000 opt-ins for $10,000, basically $10 an opt-in, I'll take that. Ian sent me 1,600, so that was really good, and he was happy because it was guaranteed money. There was no, it wasn't based on like him sending a certain number of opt-ins. I literally just gave him 10 grand. I was like, if you send these 3 emails. So once that worked, I made the same offer to a couple other affiliates, Kelly Felix, Sean Vosler, a couple other guys. Basically the exact same deal where I was like, I'll pay you 10 grand if you send these 3 opt-ins. I also offered the $10 an opt-in kind of deal to people with smaller lists. So there was a bunch of people who had smaller lists that promoted mine as well, who sent me maybe 200 opt-ins or 300 opt-ins. And then I paid them $10 an opt-in. So that worked pretty well. Overall, I added around 6,000 people to my list with affiliates. I spent, it was somewhere between 35 grand and 40 grand on that. And I brought in close to $160,000 in sales in just 3 months based on those new opt-ins and new leads that I brought in through basically selling them copy accelerator memberships, selling them on live events. This is not even counting other products, affiliate offers, stuff that they've probably bought as well. And that was only in 3 months. So now a year later, it probably, I don't know, that's a 4x ROI. This is probably, it's probably at like a 8x ROI now. So very, very huge ROI. And honestly, I should be doing more of it because it works really well. Travis said, how long were you emailing your list before you enlisted your affiliates? So 2021 is when I started doing affiliate stuff. I'd been mailing the list since 2018, but honestly, I don't think that I wouldn't let that affect it. Like you could start a new list tomorrow and start emailing it for a week and then get affiliates to start mailing it. Yeah, I'll show you guys some examples of what the affiliates sent out in a little bit here. So that was the first one, paying affiliates. Second is organic traffic from Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, things like that. YouTube is currently bringing me around 300 to 400 opt-ins per month. Facebook usually 200 to 300 a month. I'll show you a couple examples of these. This is one I just posted on my personal Facebook page. So this is a really kind of big kind of social proof credibility thing. And I talked about all the big name marketers that were on my email list. I talked about how this is back when it was more, you had to apply to get on my list. I didn't just do the opt-in thing. But anyways, I talked about it and said, yeah, you'd be smart to get on it, blah, blah, blah. And put a link down here in the comments, and a bunch of people kind of chiming in, tagging people, saying they love my emails, all that fun stuff. So that got me, I did that a lot. I did that probably like once a month on my Facebook page for a while. It was getting people like that. I want to show one here from Ning, who I think Ning does a good job at this. He'll post more kind of like content stuff on his Facebook page. And then at the end, he promotes right here. It's like, go grab my free copywriting book and he gives you the URL. So that's a kind of good way to do it as well. So if you don't have a ton of money, but you have time, you can do things like organic traffic from Facebook. And then YouTube would be my other one, where I don't have a ton of, I have let's see. I have 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. But in every single thing, I have basically the link to my opt-in. So if we click this, oops. This goes to my opt-in. This is on every single video that I have on YouTube. I could probably do a lot more on YouTube in terms of promoting it within the video and stuff like that. But it works really well. Andrew said, John, I'll get to yours later. Andrew said, did you notice a drop in opt-in quality with a straight opt-in versus the application on your website? Honestly, I haven't noticed anything different. The biggest difference, like I had people promote to my application and they just sent me way less opt-ins. I mean, they sent me way less. Yeah, it was just so much less. So like I think the first time Ian promoted to my opt-in, he maybe sent me 150 opt-ins. Or I mean, sorry, when he promoted to the application, he sent me like 150, and then when he promoted to the opt-in, he sent me like 1,600. So massively difference in the amount that I brought in. So it's like, even if the quality was worse somehow, there was so much more of it that I'm sure it made up for it in spades. All right. Number 3 is list swaps. I'll show you guys an example of this. So a list swap is when you promote someone else's opt-in in exchange for them promoting your opt-in. So no money is exchanged. Nobody's getting commissions. Nobody's paying anything. It's just, hey, I'll promote yours if you promote mine. I've done these with Ben Settle, Stefan, Brian Kurtz, Kim, David Deutsch, and a few other people. Give you a good example of the one I did with Ben, which worked out really well for both of us. Ben sent me 546 opt-ins with one email to his list. I sent him 400 plus opt-ins plus 200 more from our Facebook group. I will show you what these emails looked like. Here's the one I wrote about Ben. I had the subject line, the modern day Dan Kennedy ? So I just tell the story basically of how I heard of Ben and how I got to know him. Basically, I clicked on a random Facebook ad, got on his list, had never heard of him. Seemed a little grumpy, like he was trying to push people away. Reminded me a lot of Dan Kennedy. I eventually brought his print newsletter, a couple of his books. Then in 2019, I was at the Titans Mastermind. We wound up seated next to each other for 2 days. We shot the shit on email, world building, story-based emails, and a whole lot more. Anyways, if you don't know who Ben is, if you don't know who this is, I'm talking about Ben Settle. I think he nails the principles that Dan Kennedy's been preaching for years, probably better than anybody else. So I'm going to share a few things I've learned from Ben. So this is really kind of a content-based of here's things that I learned from Ben. And I go through basically like 3 things. This is who I am, take it or leave it. I think that's something Ben's really good at. Entertain, don't inform. And then mail your list every day, sometimes more. So those are like the 3 big things I learned from Ben. And then at the end, I really talk about if you're not on his list, I suggest you get on it. I link to his list here. I also give a little note here where it's like, by the way, his opt-in page is a great study in how he incorporates his personality into everything. It's not just your standard opt-in page. It's very Ben Settley. I suggest you give it a look here. So that was the email I sent to my list. Here is the email Ben sent to his list. Subject line, what I'd read if I was a brand spanking marketing newbie fresh off the turnip truck. So he basically talks about when he was at Titans, he met me. I emailed him about my SOS report. He was like, I usually refuse these, but Justin's one of the few people I've learned anything genuinely useful from. So I read the thing, and basically he's like, there's no hacks, there's no tricks. In fact, it's all very meat and potatoes. But it's a great framework. This is basically the free report that I'm giving away. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So he just tells them it all across his email address, blah, 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 blah. He's not getting paid. There you go. Super simple. Like I said, he sent me 500 some opt-ins. The cool thing here is, so we each got 500 plus opt-ins, but the cool thing is a lot of those people that bought stuff from me in the past and that bought stuff from Penn then converged, and now they're buying stuff from the other person as well. So we had a couple people I remember who had never even heard of me who were on Ben's list, and then like 3 weeks later they signed up for Copy Accelerator, which was $15,000. So really good ROI on getting the 500 opt-ins. And the other big thing I really want to point out here is the quality of the people that you get from other people's list are usually really damn high compared to like what you get from a cold Facebook ad or a cold YouTube ad, because most of the people on the list are used to getting daily emails. They're used to buying stuff. So those are really kind of the people I want on my list. All right, last one here for building a list: teaching to different groups, coaching programs, masterminds, and then I promote my opt-in at the end. So Agora used to have a marketing call every Tuesday, and there'd be couple hundred copywriters, marketers, all of them in the Agora universe. And then they'd invite some other kind of big name people from the outside to come in and be on it as well. I used to present 2 to 3 times a year on this, on very specific topic, whether it's email or upsells or whatever. I remember, I think the first one I did, they let me promote my opt-in at the end. I got like it was like 200 or 300 opt-ins from it. Not a ton of opt-ins, but the quality of the people on that call was super, super high, because it was a lot of really good copywriters. It was a lot of business owners that were doing 7 and 8 figures a year. It was super high quality people getting on my list. And I really care about that much more than I care about getting 10,000 leads that aren't going to do anything. I care about the who way more than how many. So that's a big thing to kind of keep in mind. But that all came from me getting on a call and teaching stuff. So I've done very similar things with Brian Kurtz and his Titans group, Alex Catoni and her group, Carleen Angley Cole and her coaching group. Basically all these coaching groups, I've taught stuff, and I've been able to pitch my opt-in at the end, tell them to get on my email list, and I'll get, some of them are smaller than others. Some might get 15 opt-ins. Some of them I might get 50, but they're all really high quality, and that's really kind of what I want. Yeah, so that's kind of what I said. So if someone is in a coaching group and is paying money, whether that's monthly or a yearly thing, like those are the kind of people I want on my email list, because they've already shown that they're buyers. One little note on this that's really helps a lot. When I pitch something at the end of like a podcast or a coaching program and give people a URL, the easier the URL, the more opt-ins you're going to get. So I made a super simple one, literally justin123.com, like super easy to remember. And that just redirects to my opt-in. So that makes it super easy for people to remember. Whereas if you're trying to give them like go to justingoff.com/opt-in, that's a lot harder to remember than justin123.com. So kind of recap the list building. So paying affiliates for leads, that works really well. It's probably my main one that I use. Organic leads from Facebook, YouTube, list swaps, and then teaching in other coaching groups. So that is everything I got to share with you. I'm going to go through some of the comments in here and answer them. John said, do you label where you get your opt-ins from? No, that would have been smart, but I'm not that not that detail oriented. It would have been really smart to do. I know a lot of the bigger direct response companies do that. They tag all their leads and opt-ins and track lifetime value and all that from based on the source and all that. Yeah, I would love to have that, but no, I've never done it. Caroline said, do you review, approve, give feedback on each other's emails before they're sent out? Ben and I did. I mean, I would have been fine, honestly, with whatever he sent out. He shot me ahead of time. Was like, here's what I'm gonna send out. I'm like, that's fine. If the person's a good email writer, I'm not probably not gonna have anything to say. But yeah, you definitely could if you're more, I guess, worried about your brand and how you look. Andrew said, do you ever run into issues with people challenging redirects? I've noticed that some on social platforms, they warn people that you're taking them off the platform when you use a redirect service versus not using one. I haven't run into any issues with that, but I don't know if I think if you're leaving YouTube, I don't know. I mean, are you saying like if they left YouTube, that wouldn't come up if I didn't have a redirect? Yeah, I'm not really sure. It's something I've never really thought. I just do it, like I said, it's more for the ease of use. Forrest says, do you have any recommendations if you wanted to use paid ads to build a list? I know that gets complex, but any big picture recommendations strategy wise? Like I said, it really depends on the niche, but I would say most people are doing it to get buyers. So they're running ads to a landing page or a VSL selling usually a low ticket thing, anywhere from $5 to maybe $40. And then they have the whole funnel behind it. And they're actually getting buyers onto the list. That would be kind of the big picture recommendation for almost everybody I know in health and financial and stuff like that's how, and dating. Those are kind of the three kind of big niches. That's how they've built most of their lists. James said, any specific strategies to finding and hitting up people for $10 opt-in and list swap deals? Yeah, really just find the people that are in your niche. I mean, you should have if you have a good idea of who's in your niche, which you should, it shouldn't be that hard to figure out their email list and get on their email list and see what they're doing. Networking with them in Facebook groups, stuff like that, meeting them at events. All that stuff really comes from kind of knowing your actual niche. Matthew said, I provide email delivery services. Do you have specific examples of what service providers could model against? I've got a good idea of what I've seen, but looking for, I do not. No, not really sure about that. Patrick, is there or can there be a conflict with we promise not to share your email and list swapping? Just curious as to how that works in the marketing world. Well, they're not. I mean, I'm not getting like he sent it, like Ben sent an email to his list about me. People have to click on it and then opt in. Exact same thing for my list. Like I'm not giving him his like a Excel spreadsheet of my email list. That's not what we're doing. Interesting. Yeah, Andrew, I'm not really familiar with that, so not anything I've really thought about. Social on fire, you have to promote or have to post it again. So how do you up your open rates just because it's you sending? So that's really everything we talked about in terms of the bonding stuff and telling stuff about you and telling stories, because that gets to the point where people like, know, and trust you, and they actually look forward to opening your emails, and they're not even really, like I said, like the subject lines really don't even matter as much. So it's all about the bonding stuff that I taught you previously in the training. That's really what it all boils down to. Because if you don't have that, nobody's going to be looking forward to your emails and looking forward to what you're saying. So it's all about the bonding. John said, how do you choose what to promote? I have a couple criteria. One, it's got to make me, at least for my list, my minimum is like, if I'm gonna do a week-long promo, I need to make minimum $10,000 because there's all kinds of other offers I could promote that are going to make me probably a lot more money. So it's got to make me, that's kind of the floor. So like you saw with this one, I made like 55 grand promoting my own thing. So minimum it needs to make like 10 grand. So that's step one. Step two, it's got to be something I actually believe in. So there's a lot of products I could promote to my list that I could probably make great money on that is not something I believe in or something I want to be associated with. I really value the trust I have with my list a lot. And if you're in it for the long term, you really need to think about that, because if you send a bunch of people to some shitty scammy offer and they're not happy with it, that really reflects badly on you. So really promoting things that, like I said, playing that long game. I mean, making an extra 20 grand promoting something that sucks is not worth destroying the credibility and the trust that I have on my list. James said, any reason you don't send people to an offer after your opt-in? It's a great question. So I think in an ideal world, I would, but I honestly did not and do not have anything to kind of sell that would be a good fit there. So, I mean, yeah, in an ideal world, that would be smart. They opt in and liquidate some of the affiliate costs by making a sale right away. But yeah, like I said, I'm really kind of playing more of the long game. You'll see a lot of the people who do lead gen on a really high level where they're doing 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 leads a day. That's how they do that. So once they opt in, they're trying to sell them something right away to really liquidate the ad cost right away. Bjorn said, I remember being on email list a few years ago and he promote affiliate offers without introducing who these new people were even. And that was really weird and jarring to me and led me to unsubscribe. Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I think if you're in it for the long game, if you're going to do the personality driven emails that are good for coaches, consultants, experts, gurus, whatever it be, you really do have to keep the long game in mind. And it's more about keeping that trust and that bond between you and the list. I mean, there's a reason I still have people on my list from 4 years ago who are still buying stuff from me today. It's because I kind of give a lot of thought to that type of stuff. Anybody else questions before we wrap up? I'm gonna get the recording over to my tech guy. Hopefully he can get it up tonight or tomorrow morning, and I'll shoot an email out to you guys. So you'll have everything with the swipes and all that. Dr. Peters said, can't wait to watch the replay. Any difference in approach in writing for a nonprofit organization looking for fundraising and not so much focused on selling? Yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of these story-based ones for a nonprofit. So when I've written emails for dog rescues, I tell a lot of really just nightmare kind of stories for the dog rescue. So dogs who've been abused or abandoned and they're in really bad shape. And then you're trying to raise money for those. You're trying to raise money for those specific dogs. Those work really, really well. That same thing happens in a lot of nonprofit. If you try to tell with like facts and figures, that doesn't work anywhere near as well as like finding one specific thing, like one little girl that's homeless and needs food to kind of survive. Talking about that, you want to keep them specific to that. Those tend to do the best. John said, what liquor do you got in the bottle behind you? Some type of whiskey. I don't know. I'm not much of a drinker. That's just there for friends. Forrest said, I got a massive amount of value from this. Thanks a ton. Worth every dime. Best email workshop I've done in a while. Awesome, man. Thank you. Love hearing that. Dan Wrightman, what's up, my man? So got some solid nuggets out of this. Thanks again. Awesome. This was so valuable. Thank you. Ricardo, I'm building emails for my mortgage customers. Could you send us a template that has been successful for you? I'm not sure exactly what kind of email are you looking for. You guys are going to get templates of all the emails or not templates, but you're going to get swipes of all the emails I shared in the training. Talarian said actionable value. Thank you. Awesome, man. Caro's cleared up so much I had around writing emails. Awesome. Bobby, great. Learned a lot of valuable things. Awesome. Bjorn, fantastic. I don't know, Ricardo, it's kind of hard. Like if you're just saying standard email, I mean, it's kind of hard. I don't really know what you mean by that. Standard could be different for really everything. James said, are you doing anything specific for deliverability? The only thing I really do, I do a few things. So when people get on my list, I try to have them respond to one of the first emails that I send them. And then like, instead of giving them the PDF right away, like on a page, I send it in an email. So they have to open the email to get it. So that gets kind of going with opening emails, which is going to land more in the primary inbox if they're constantly opening my emails. I also send out an email I used to do this more often, where about once a week, where to try to get people to respond. The more people respond to your emails, the more you're going to get better open rates. So yeah, those are some of the things I've done. Dr. Carney's fantastic presentation. I'll be watching it again. Awesome, man. Tom, do you consider a different lead magnet opt-in or test a couple before going with the SOS report? That's a great question, Tom. I did consider a bunch of different ones. My big thing was I wanted something that tapped into all three of the things I was trying to get, which would be business owners, copywriters, and people who are just in a 9-to-5 job looking to make money. And I felt like that really kind of tapped into that. If I was going for like, you could really target your lead magnet to specific, like if I was going for just intermediate and advanced level copywriters, I could make one specifically for them and just target them. So yeah, it really depends on who you're trying to pull in and who you're trying to put on your list. John said, suggestions of where to get basic direct response, copywriting chops, i.e. what elements to use, structure, transitions. I think the RMBC course by Stefan is probably, it's what I would highly recommend. Start there. If you're trying to get basic direct response copywriting chops, I definitely would do that. What should I consider in either posting on Facebook or send out emails? At the moment, we only post on Facebook and have not started email marketing. So a lot of what I've taught here, you could honestly do on Facebook as well. If you're doing the nonprofit stuff, like I said, I would really focus on the storytelling. The nightmare kind of story stuff is what works the best. Something that makes people feel really empathetic with whoever it is or whatever it is you're talking about. You can tell those stories over and over again, and you can do them with pictures, and that's going to do really, really well. So yeah. And then you can also obviously use Facebook to push people over to an email list. You can do that as well. Awesome, guys. I'm going to wrap this up. I hope this was super helpful for you guys. I'm glad everybody stuck around. It was a long multi-hour training, but I hope you guys all got something good out of it. I am going to, like I said, I'll put everything, slides, PDFs, video, put all that in the, I'll put all of it on a page, send it out to you guys. So you'll get an email. You get an email from me with all that soon. So thanks again for hanging out. Hope you guys got a lot of this, and hope to see you on the next one.